I've seen the fire in our nation's eyes when anger prowls for prey. I've heard good people draw their lines and call it holy rage. But the cross was never raised to bless the stones we throw. And if mercy leaves the house, there's something wrong down in the soul. Words ain't bullets, but they can hit the same. And once a heart turns cold enough, it forgets what grace is for. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place. No room for hate. No, no room for hate. No room for hate. You can wave a flag above it, you can quote a verse or two, you can dress it up like justice till it almost sounds like truth. But outrage ain't righteous when it changes with the side. And you can't love your neighbor treating them like they're downrange. We're all image bearers, breath of God and dust. And you don't heal a broken land by teaching it not to trust. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place. No room for hate. No room for hate. No room for hate. Drag it to the cross, lay it in the ground. Let the blood of Jesus turn the whole thing around. Truth can still be spoken, courage still can stand, but rage don't get to rule the soul of a faithful man. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place.
Let revival start where the anger breaks.
Where the anger breaks.
Let healing rise up where the hurt gives way.
No room for hate.
No room for hate.
No, no room for hate.
No room for hate.
Not in Jesus' name. Oh, not in this house. Not in this heart. Not in His name. No room for hate.
Remember when entertainment was actually entertaining? When comedy was about being funny, Movies were about telling great stories, and you didn't need a political lecture every time you hit play. Great entertainment still exists, it's just getting harder to find. Even the biggest streaming platforms leave audiences disappointed. That's why there's Studio TST, pure entertainment, real comedy, independent films, bold creators, movies, comedy, music, and more, and the home of fearless sketch comedy. That show tonight, entertainment the way you want it. Funny, creative, unapologetic, and agenda-free. Studio TST, the future of entertainment starts here. Join Studio TST today for just $5 a month.
Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
In uncertain times, we could use someone to lean on. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma will stand by you with plan options to fit your budget. If you've recently lost your job, had a baby, or moved, you can still get the healthcare coverage you and your family need. Financial help may be available for those who qualify. Call 855-452-BLUE or visit hereforyouok.com to see if you're eligible to enroll. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma, a division of Healthcare Service Corporation, a mutual legal reserve company.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Got a vendetta. Coffee tastes like bad decisions I ain't made yet. Boss man talking about we got her, and that means me, brother. Afraid I got a terminal case of the I don't want us. Mind checked out, heart ain't in the building. That second hand's crawling like it hates my guts. The man treating rich like it's a sin. Even God took a beat. So, suck it. Thank God it's Friday, punching out loud. Hands in the air, middle finger to 9 to 5. Still waiting, but tonight I don't care. Cold beer sermon and a bar stool prayer. Take this job and shove it, I quit. Till Monday. 'Cause tonight I'm free. Yeah, work and wait. It ain't owning me. So raise 'em up high. Let the whistle blow. Thank God it's Friday. that's all I know. Rich got the pulse of liberty.
I hate to do it. I know you guys love it when I let the whole song play, but we got way too much to talk about today for me to be able to do that. And I know I usually try to make Fridays a little bit more fun too. I don't know how much of that's going to be able to happen. Hang on, I just realized I have to fix something before I change off of that. So hang on. Let's do that and do that. Okay. That way, when I play it next time, I don't forget that I had to bring the volume down manually on that one. That's the one thing I don't like about the video setup. It's great because you guys get the better sound quality, but it's extra work for me because there's things I have to do that I don't have to do when it's through my board. Because see, right now I can do this, 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 I can do this. Anyway, so welcome into the show, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I am a little punchy today. You guys, I probably told you this story before. So you remember how we had a running joke that I got this house so cheap because it was haunted? Well, guess what? It's a good thing I work from home because yesterday I realized that I can't find either set of my keys, and I haven't been anywhere since like last Thursday. So yeah, either my son, who is the only person who's currently in the house with me because my daughter and my granddaughter are at one of my other daughter's house for the week for the summer, is punking me, or the little old lady we bought the house from was like, all my keys belong to you. I'm not sure which, but anyway, so we're here. We're live, and it's Friday, and it is finally Friday for those of you working for the weekend. If you are on the East Coast, you got less than 4 hours, so your clock is winding down if you're doing that whole 9 to 5 Monday through Friday thing. And I know not very many people get to do that anymore, but it's still fun to think about. You know, remember the show the movie 9 to 5? You remember how they used to be scheduled from 9 to 5, and they got a lunch break too? It always occurred to me, it's like, wait, does that mean their lunches are paid? Because even when I had a banker's hour job, which I only had for about 10 years, it occurred to me that my lunches weren't paid. Closest I ever had to that schedule was either 8 to 4:30 with a half-hour unpaid lunch, or 8:30 to 5. Also, again, with a half-hour unpaid lunch. Now, they wanted me, and I fought them kicking and screaming. At one point, when a new site manager came in, they wanted us to all do 8 to 5 with an hour lunch. And I'm like, you're not getting an extra half hour of my life unpaid. It's not happening. It's not happening. It's not happening. And he's writing me on this hour-long lunch thing. And I'm like, that's because I'm not giving you another half hour of my life for free. It's not going to happen. But anyway. So speaking of things for free, you might have been wondering where I was going with that. But again, if you joined us Wednesday, we did a deep dive on everything that happened Tuesday night. And I had probably about 4 hours worth of notes and a voice that lasted for about an hour and 45 minutes. And as you can hear, today, it's not much better, which is why you can occasionally hear me slurping on a cough drop, but we're doing this damn thing anyway. Because it's Friday, and I don't want to be like, I can't do the show because I don't have a voice. But my doctor is pointing and laughing right now because she kept telling me, don't go back to work until Friday. Do your writing, do the other things that you do, but you need to rest your voice until at least Friday. And I didn't listen. I didn't do as much as I normally do, but I didn't listen. And now I kind of feel like I'm paying for it. That and the little old lady that still apparently lives somewhere in my house stole my keys. So again, we're not starting from scratch. If you were with us Wednesday, you know we spent a lot of time on the pitch and why socialism is currently gaining ground with younger voters in America. Why the Democratic establishment got rocked in New York, why the DSA and the Mamdani wing are not just holding signs anymore, and why a lot of younger Americans do not hear the word socialism the way the older crowd hears it. Older Americans hear socialism and think Soviet Union, bread lines, Cuba, and no, I don't mean Cuba Gooding Jr., Mao, Venezuela, secret police, government control, and all the warnings that were burned into the American mind during the Cold War. But a lot of younger voters hear socialism and think rent relief, healthcare, student debt going away, tax the rich, punish Wall Street, go after those evil corporations so you can make my life more affordable. And while you're at it, why don't you just go ahead and make the system fair? Wednesday, we did the thing conservatives have to do if we want to win this argument. We did not just laugh at them. That's fun. Not going to pretend it's not. We talked about why the pitch works. We talked about rent, groceries, student loans, housing inflation, crony capitalism, government distorted markets, bailouts, protected insiders, and a ladder that looks a lot harder to climb than the one they were promised. To be clear, I still think socialism is the poison being sold as medicine. Kind of like our modern healthcare system today, honestly. Notice they don't ever really treat the illness, they treat the symptoms of the illness. But if you refuse to admit the patient is sick, despite what you're seeing, desperate people will keep reaching for the bottle. That was Wednesday. Wednesday was the pitch. Today, we get into the fine print. The mistake a lot of people make, and this includes conservatives, moderates, business leaders, and some old school Democrats who should honestly know better, is assuming socialism has to introduce itself as socialism, because it doesn't. It can introduce itself as cheaper rent, student debt relief, healthcare, anti-Trump resistance, abolish ICE, Gaza activism, and working people deserve more. Then when you finally read the platform, you realize the campaign speech was the soft sell. The platform is the power document. And that is what we're doing today. We're going to read the fine print, because this is not just help people afford rent. This is not just young people are angry, because they are. It is not just Wall Street is unpopular. And it is also not just Democrats had a bad primary night. That's what they want you to think. That's why you hear so many of the Democratic talking heads going, oh, we've always been a big tent party, blah, blah, blah. So you're stealing from the GOP line to try to cover for the fact that you're being hijacked by commies. Interesting. So again, this isn't about Democrats having a bad primary night. The DSA platform itself points towards a very different kind of country. They want a new constitutional structure, a redefined electorate, voting rights for non-citizens, public ownership of major corporations, public ownership or control over major parts of our energy sector, transportation sectors, and natural resources. Universal promises with very little serious talk about scarcity, border radicalism, immediate amnesty, an end to all deportations, reduced American military power, and ending sanctions pressure on regimes like Cuba, Venezuela, and Iran. Now, we've done a lot of that with Venezuela already, because the new president is somebody this administration feels like they can work with. Cuba might be about to do some changes of their own. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But again, that stuff's not just about a housing plan. That is not just compassion with a campaign logo that fits nicely on a bumper sticker. That is a movement telling you what it wants to do if you're willing to listen with the power that they're starting to be handed. Wednesday was about why the pitch works. Today is about what happens when the pitch, the soft sell, becomes their power play. We're not going to get lazy about this. I sit down a lot, but I'm not lazy. We're gonna say to every young person who wants cheaper rent, but we're not gonna say that every young person who wants cheaper rent automatically wants North Korea, because that's not true. We're not gonna say every person who supports student debt relief is secretly dreaming of labor camps. Some of them might be, but we can't say all. Just saying. Anyway. We're not going to say every progressive voter is Mao with a tote bag. I was going to say Mao with a fanny pack, but I guess I got overruled. But anyway, that is not the argument. The argument is that political movements do not stop where their softest supporters think they stop. They stop where power stops. And they stop when power stops them. And if nobody stops them, they just keep going and going and going and going. Anybody remember the old Energizer Bunny commercials? Yeah, that's kind of the DSA right now. So today we start with the panic inside the Democratic Party. And I think I have a clip for this. Hang on, let me look. I think. Do I? Here's the crazy blue-haired lady. We'll get to her later. I could have swore I had the Carvel clip. Anyway, I guess I really don't need the Carvel clip. We've got some other folks that are kind of saying the same thing, and we'll play one of those clips instead. But let me read what Carvel said, then we'll play this other clip that kind of ties into it, because it's not just Carvel. It's one thing when it's Carvel. You know, he's kind of he's the only crazy old person they still half-ass listen to. So yeah. All right, so we'll come back to that in a moment. But for now, oh, look. Dude with the name Captain Homer telling me I have shit for brains. Why aren't you off eating a donut somewhere, Broseph? Just saying. Anyway. All right, so, and again, right now I'm not even talking about Trump, so why are you? I'm talking about James Carville. Pay attention or go away. This isn't about Trump. None of this show today is about Trump, because Trump is not everything. You guys seem to think that he is. So, again, we're looking at the panic inside of the Democratic Party that's happened since Tuesday. So James Carville is now telling the DSA-backed candidates to go start their own party. So maybe, you know, as we pointed out the other day, maybe Van Jones is right. Maybe the roof really is collapsing. But it's not just him, though. So here's this clip that I was talking about a second ago.
You know, there's certain things that I believe in that are not being reflected in the current environment, especially with some of these races on Tuesday. And as we said in our pledge, you know, we're for capitalism, not socialism. We're for safety, not lawlessness. We're proud of America, not ashamed of America. And we need to be promoting those things. And, you know, the far left and the far right, you know, they're all very well organized. But those of us that don't support those far left or far right principles need to do a better job organizing and getting our message out. You know, there's certain things that I believe in that are not being.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second, because I love that they keep talking about the far left and the far right. Here's my problem with that, though. You know what my problem with that is? Is this. If you listen to what the Republicans are talking about today, the Republicans of today sound like the Democratic Party from 1992, 1993. And even just a little bit later. The Republicans today sound like Bill Clinton used to sound. The Republicans of today sound like Chuck Schumer used to sound. So it's not that we've gone too far right. As a matter of fact, we are probably more left than we were when I was young, because we've ceded so much ground on so many different things, because we have tried to be the party of let's just go along to get along. We've always treated the Democratic Party like they are a big brother, and we've been seeking their approval. This happened all the way back under Reagan. So the idea that we're the ones that have gone far right is kind of insane, because if anything, everything that happens is every time the left goes further left, the right kind of trails along, because they're still chasing after them, going, please, don't you just want to be friends? And you can see it in the things that we talk about today. Bill Clinton was talking about immigration issues while he was president that the left doesn't even address today. We are the ones trying to address them. Chuck Schumer, same. So the idea that we're still too far right when they're the ones who keep running off to the left is insane to me. And now the thing about it is they're not even hiding it anymore. So you heard it. They're starting to, and this has been happening for a little bit, but there are now public fights happening with the Democratic Party. These are things that I have never seen before in public. And we've talked about this all the time on the right. The right is great at being a circular firing squad. And we're having our own version of that right now. But I've never seen outspoken televised fights between wings of the Democratic Party before. So we've got the leaders, or the supposed leaders of the Democratic Party, talking about how much of a Big Tent party they still are. But then we've got this. So again, if the roof is collapsing, then can we talk about why socialism doesn't have to call itself socialism to become politically viable? because everybody seems to think that, it's like they're just going to knock on the door wearing a "Yes, I'm a proud socialist" t-shirt. They weren't, though. They're starting to now. And later, we're going to go through the DSA platform plank by plank using their own words. And after that, we'll move into the SAVE Act. Citizenship, election integrity, and why the ballot box matters so much. When these ideas are trying to become law, then we will take history lessons very seriously, because socialism is always sold as compassion with a budget. But when the budget fails, compassion suddenly turns to violence. So that's the show. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And again, we've already started talking about some of it, but let's go into James Carville in a little bit more detail. Because sometimes the most useful warning does not come from your own side. Sometimes it comes from somebody inside the other party who looks around and says, "Hold on, what? Hold up." That's why what's happening with Carville matters. James Carville is not a Republican. He's not MAGA. He's not a conservative talk radio host. He's not some guy in a red hat yelling on the internet. This is James Carville, the old Democratic war room guy. It's the economy, stupid. Yeah, that guy. A man who knows elections, coalitions, branding, turnout, persuasion, and what it means when a party lets a faction become bigger than the party itself. Carville is looking at some of these Mamdani-backed DSA-style candidates and basically saying, hey, start your own damn party. That line matters, not because James Carville is suddenly the moral referee of American politics, and not because we're all waiting around for Carville to tell us what conservatism should really think. It matters because he is saying out loud what a lot of establishment Democrats are probably whispering. And now they're not even really whispering it, because we just showed a group of them going on TV and saying, yeah, this is not stuff that we support. And they're saying this is not an agenda we can defend nationally. Problem is, that's not entirely true. And this is not a movement we can manage by giving it a few committee seats and a few slogans. That is the real panic. It is not just that socialists won some primaries. The panic is that they may not be content with being the energetic edge of the Democratic Party. And they've already told you that they're not comfortable with that anymore. They actually want the party. They want the leadership, the committees, the platform, the rules, the judges, the maps, the money, and all of the institutions that come with them. That is what makes this bigger than one New York primary night. Wednesday, we talked about the results. Mamdani-backed candidates went 3 for 3. Brad Lander beat Dave Goldman. Claire Valdez won. Chevalier beat Espaillat. And at one victory party, when Hakeem Jeffries appeared on screen, the crowd reportedly booed and chanted, "You're next." And I can honestly say that's not reportedly, because I've seen the video. Don't have it for today, but I've seen it. We actually played it on Gene's show on Wednesday night. You're next. Not Trump, not Republicans, not MAGA, but Jeffries, the Democratic leader in the House, the man who wants to be speaker if Democrats take the majority. You're next. That's not just a chant. That's a premonition of things to come, basically. That is the activist wing looking at the establishment and saying, you're not leading us, and you're in our way. And again, this is why Carville matters. If Rick Robinson, says the Democratic Party has a socialism problem, fine, you expect me to say that. A lot of folks sitting in chairs just like this one with even bigger microphones than mine, take that however you wish, I have been saying that for a very long time. Democrats can roll their eyes and say, there goes that crazy Republican again. But when James Carville starts sounding like the emergency broadcast system for the Democratic Party, maybe people should start paying attention. Just maybe. This is not just a branding problem. It is a governing problem. If these candidates win safe blue seats, they go to Congress. If they go to Congress, they vote. If they vote in a closely divided House, they become leverage. And they realize they're starting to hold leverage. If they become leverage, they do not have to run the whole country to move the country. A faction does not need to win the presidency to matter. It does not need to win Oklahoma, Texas, or every county in America in deep blue districts where the Democratic primary is, in fact, the real election. A disciplined faction can take seats, and those seats become votes. Those votes become leverage, and leverage becomes platform language, and platform language becomes legislation, and eventually even administrative pressure. The party that thought it was using the activist eventually discovers the activists were using the party as a scaffolding. That is how this works. I want to be careful here because we're not going to overstate it. This does not mean the entire country has gone socialist. Or does it? It does not mean every Democrat is ready to nationalize grocery stores. Or does it? It does not mean the DSA is suddenly unbeatable. I guess we'll see. It does not mean every blue district will fall. It does not mean America woke up Friday morning as a worker-owned collective with bad coffee and committee meetings at 9. Please, not the coffee. Leave my coffee alone, man. I already had 2 cups, so I'm on to this. Again, don't tell my doctor. The DSA has limits. That matters. It has a geographic profile and a demographic profile. It performs best in certain urban areas. Younger areas, highly educated areas. We need to ask ourselves why that highly educated part's becoming such a problem. Gentrifying or activist-heavy districts and places where turnout operations and ideological networks can dominate a low-turnout primary. That is true, but don't confuse limits with harmlessness. In a primary system, a faction with limits can still punch way above its weight if it's organized, disciplined, targeted, and facing an establishment that is complacent. A lot of people look at the national map and say, well, socialism can't actually win here. Maybe not, but it can win there, and it already has. And if there sends members to Congress, there matters. It can win blue cities, college towns, and districts where Democratic primary is in fact the election. Once it wins enough of those places, it changes the conversation everywhere else. That is why Wall Street is nervous. That is why Democratic centrists are also nervous. That is why Carville is sounding the alarm. That is why Jeffries getting booed matters. And that is why conservatives cannot just sit back and enjoy the show. Look, I'm as tempted to pop popcorn as everybody else, and I do understand the temptation. There is a part of me that wants to, in fact, pop that popcorn, lean back, and watch the Democratic establishment get chased around the yard by the ideological chihuahua it let off the leash after it spent years feeding it. There's some poetic justice there, but there is also a country attached to this. If socialism becomes more politically viable inside one of the 2 major parties, the rest of us do not get to stand outside the blast radius and clap, because the debris will be what's left of the country when they're done. So that's the first point. The democratic panic is in fact real. Carville is a useful warning sign for anybody willing to listen. The DSA does still have limits, but those limits do not make it harmless. They're not outside waving signs anymore. The calls are coming from inside the house, and quite literally, they're about to be coming from inside the house. Sorry, I didn't have my board set up right. So that is again the first point. So this isn't about a harmless faction anymore. A faction does not have to win the whole country to move the country. It has to win the places where one party's primary is in fact the real election. Now we get to the second point. How does socialism sell itself to people who would never say they want socialism? And this is where conservatives have to get smarter. A lot of people still think socialism has to show up wearing an armband, carrying a hammer and a sickle flag, quoting Marx at length, and promising a 5-year plan for the soybean sector. It's not how this usually works, especially in American politics. At least not at first. Socialism does not have to introduce itself honestly. It does not have to say, hello, I am here to weaken private property, expand state control, redefine citizenship, reduce constitutional checks, and put major parts of the economy under public ownership. That would be too obvious. So it comes dressed differently. Yes, socialism has come to America in drag. Just saying. It comes dressed as affordability, fairness, rent relief, student debt cancellation, healthcare. Working people deserve more. Billionaires should pay their fair share. Anti-Trump resistance, because everybody knows Trump is Hitler, but at this point I submit to you that if Hitler had a D behind his name, that party would probably vote for him. Abolish ICE, Gaza activism, compassion, and moral urgency. If each piece is sold separately, a lot of voters never stop to ask what all the pieces add up to. A voter may not say, yes, please give me socialism, but that same voter may say, yes, please rent control. Give me some of that debt cancellation, especially that medical debt and student loan debt, because that crap's crazy. Medicare for all is awesome. Free college. College should be free. Public ownership. We want the public controlling everything that matters. Abolish ICE because we won't need them anymore because we're not going to have these pesky imaginary lines on maps anymore. Voting rights for non-citizens. Ending sanctions. Weakening the Supreme Court. Eliminating the Electoral College, which would create a national popular vote, and changing how Congress is structured. At some point, the pieces stop being scattered policy ideas and actually become the system. And that is why I keep using the phrase the pitch and the platform. The pitch is what gets you emotionally, which is where they want you to live. The platform is what tells you where the power goes, and they're hoping you don't notice because the pitch is always softer than the platform. The pitch says you can't afford rent. The platform says universal rent control and a bigger government role in housing. The pitch says healthcare is too expensive. The platform says government should control the payment system. The pitch says college debt is crushing people. The platform says cancel the debt and make public higher education tuition free. The pitch says immigrants are being mistreated. The platform says end deportations, immediate amnesty, demilitarize the border, and extend voting rights to non-citizens. The pitch says the system is undemocratic. The platform says new constitution, new proportional representation, single federal legislator, reduced judicial review, and a new presidential election system. That is a lot more than cheaper rent. If you only listen to the pitch, you miss the fine print that we're calling the platform. This is where the warning is useful. Socialism is not guaranteed to sweep the country, but it can become politically tenable without voters fully understanding they are buying socialism. It can be packaged, reframed, attached to anger at Trump, ICE, Gaza, Wall Street, housing issues, healthcare issues, and student debt. Then conservatives comfort themselves by saying, well, most voters are sane. Remember, that's what they said about the income tax. Maybe, but sanity is not self-executing. Bad ideas do not lose because they are bad. Bad ideas lose when somebody explains why they are bad, when somebody explains why they are bad and offers something better. If the right answer is that is socialism, stupid, we're going to lose to people who do not think they're buying socialism. They think they are buying relief, fairness, somebody who finally fights for them, and a way out of the squeeze. If we do not explain the trade-offs, the platform, the power, and the history, the pitch will keep working and the fine print will go unnoticed. The generational memory problem matters here. The generation that remembers the Soviet Union, the Berlin Wall, the Cold War, Mao, Cuba, and the long record of socialist failure is aging. Younger voters did not grow up with the Soviet Union as the bad guy in every nightly news package. They did not grow up watching the Berlin Wall as the symbol of a world divided between freedom and tyranny. For many of them, socialism is not a system of state control. It is a vibe. It is fairness. It is tax the rich. It's free stuff they assume somebody else can pay for. It is a protest against an economy they believe actually failed them. That is dangerous, not because every young socialist has read Das Kapital. Most have not. Not because every younger socialist wants central planning. Many couldn't define that if they tried. It is dangerous because the emotional pitch is easier to sell than the economic reality. And the people selling it know that. They do not have to say the whole platform in a campaign ad. They say rent, dignity, justice, workers, democracy, Palestine, ICE, billionaires, and affordability. Then the platform, or the fine print, does the rest. Money alone cannot beat that. Wall Street can pour money into campaigns. Business leaders can write checks. Moderates can buy ads. Establishment Democrats can call donors. Republicans can post memes. But if the other side has a simple affordability story and a ground game, money alone is not going to be enough. You cannot beat an organized affordability message with a donor luncheon. We'll get into those donor luncheons in a little bit, maybe too. You cannot beat door knockers with cocktail party anxiety. You cannot beat a movement that says your life is too expensive. We know who to blame, unless you have a better explanation and a better answer. Some of the pain, in point of fact, is real. Some of the anger actually happens to be justified. Some institutions young voters distrust have earned that distrust. Some of corporate America has been cowardly, cynical, political, and self-protective. Some of government absolutely helped create the cost of living mess that we are currently in. Some of the market they experienced was not a free market at all. It was cronyism, regulation, bailouts, and scarcity dressed up in capitalism's clothing. So the answer is not to defend everything with a stock sticker. The answer is to tell the truth. Yes, life is too expensive. Because it is. But there are reasons why it is, and these reasons have been around for a very long time. The system has, in fact, at points in time been rigged in too many places. Yes, housing has been blocked. Yes, college became a debt machine. Yes, healthcare is a labyrinth. Yes, inflation robbed you. Yes, corporate and government power have gotten way too cozy with one another. But no, socialism is not the cure, because the cure they are selling gives even more power to the very same things that have created a lot of this mess in the first place, the same kinds of institutions that created the disease. So they have infected America with a disease. They're the only ones who can fix it, but we can only fix it by giving them more power, which is what helped create this mess in the first place. All right, so we're long, and I know that. We're going to get through as much of this as we can. I am potentially up against a hard stop, though, at 3 Eastern, because I'm hoping we do a weekend news roundup today. I haven't heard from any of that crew yet, and I know summertime, everything's a little crazy. If we don't do a weekend news roundup, I may just keep going if my voice holds out. But we're going to take the first break of the show, and when we come back, we're going to read the platform. Not a Republican mailer, not a conservative meme, and not some parody of the DSA. Their own actual platform. Once you read it, this stops sounding like a rent relief conversation and starts sounding like a power play. A new constitutional order, a redefined electorate, voting rights for non-citizens, public ownership of major corporations, universal promises with hidden fine print and lots of trade-offs, including things like immediate amnesty, an end to deportations, a weaker American posture abroad, and a theory of government that says when the plan fails, the answer is always give us more control. That's next. This is the Rick Robinson Show. We'll be right back after this brief music break. And again, we're going to do our usual Friday stuff as much as possible, so we do have our tribute to first responders. So we'll be playing that, and then we'll come right back and keep on trucking. If you like what you're hearing here, make sure you have liked, followed, shared, subscribed, whatever options you have. Remember, YouTube and Rumble subscriptions are free. When the join button pops up, that's when they want you to start forking stuff over. We don't do that yet anyway, so just feel free to come hang out with us wherever. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
In, somebody answers. Day or night, they're already moving. Calm voices, fast hands, doing the work while the rest of the world freezes. From a headset to a truck, from a badge to a door, they don't stop to count the cost. They step in when it matters. It's not about being seen, it's about they're holding the line when the lines go dead, standing their ground when the world goes dark. They're the calm in the chaos, holding the line through the fire, the flood, when everything falls. They don't ask why, they just answer the call, always standing in the gap for us all. Before the sirens faded, before before the scene is clear, someone's already making sense of the moment. Keeping people alive, keeping things from getting worse. Some run toward danger, some stay behind and hold it together. Different roles, same weight, same promise to show up. When everything's on the line, they're already there. They're holding the line when the lines go dead, standing their ground when the world goes dark. They're the calm in the chaos, holding the line through the fire, the flood. When everything falls, they don't ask why, they just answer the call. Always standing in the gap for us all. This is service, this is sacrifice, this is how lives are saved. No spotlight, no applause, just showing up again and again. They're holding the line when the world goes dark. When everything's breaking, they hold their ground. They're the calm in the chaos, holding the line. So we raise our voices for the ones who stand. Every voice, every badge, every helping hand. They don't ask why, they just answer the call. Always standing in the gap for us all. Always standing in the gap for us all. For those who run and for those who hold steady, for those who stand in the gap.
For all you guys yelling, things like Trump, and F Trump and all that stuff that you're putting in my YouTube chats, you realize he's gone in like 3 years, right? Never to return. You guys are still stuck on him and got him living rent-free in your heads. Meanwhile, your own side is being chewed up and spit out by communists. Maybe you should be focusing more on that. Just my opinion. Do with it what you wish. Welcome back into the program, ladies and gentlemen. Again, this is the Rick Robinson Show. Before the break, I said we were going to do something dangerous in modern politics. We're going to read. Not a Republican ad, not a conservative meme, not a parody of what socialists believe their own platform. This is where the conversation changes. The campaign pitch is always softer than the platform. The campaign pitch says affordability. The platform tells you where the power goes once you give it to them. The campaign says this is all about the working people. The platform tells you who gets to define what working people are allowed to vote for. Own, build, earn, save, produce, and keep. Which will eventually be nothing if they get power. The campaign pitch says democracy. The platform tells you whether they mean the constitutional republic we have now or a new system that they would rather build. So start with the structure of the country itself. Before we talk about rent control, student debt, healthcare, free college, or border policy, let's start there. The DSA is not just talking about a bigger child tax credit or another housing program. Their program points towards a new democratic constitution. It points toward a proportional representation in a different structure. A completely different structure for federal power. A single federal legislature. Changing the presidential election system. Reducing the Supreme Court's power of judicial review. And remaking the machinery of the American government itself. That is not a side issue. That is, in fact, the issue. And if they're allowed to do that, that's going to be the whole ballgame. Once a political movement says the constitutional architecture itself is the problem, every policy debate becomes a power debate. This is not just how do we make rent cheaper? This is who gets to rewrite the rules of the country. This is not just how do we help working families? This is who gets to decide what counts as democracy. This is not just how do we fix healthcare. This is who gets to control the institutions that stand between the citizens and the state. If you only listen to the campaign speech, you hear nice words: workers, democracy, fairness, dignity, power to the people, man. Control over your life, control over your government, control over the economy. All of that sounds really lovely and all kinds of wonderful. But you better be asking some follow-up questions. Who controls the thing called the people? Every movement that wants power says it represents the people. That is the oldest trick in politics. We are the people. We speak for the people. We fight for the people. We are democracy. Once a movement declares itself to be democracy, opposition becomes something else: obstruction, corruption, greed, reaction, anti-democracy, and, by extension, illegitimacy. A constitutional republic is not designed to make government fast. It is designed to limit government. It is designed to make power fight power, to make ambition check ambition, to slow down the people who are absolutely sure they are morally entitled to run your life. The Senate, the House, the presidency, the courts, federalism, state governments, local governments, judicial review, enumerated powers, and divided authority all exist because the founders understood something modern ideologues hate. Good intentions are not enough. They are never enough. Power has to be restrained, even when the people asking for it sound compassionate, and sometimes even especially then. If you believe you represent justice itself, then every limit on your power looks like injustice. The Constitution becomes an obstacle. The courts become an obstacle. The Senate becomes an obstacle. The Electoral College becomes an obstacle. States, local control, private property, free speech, citizenship, the family, the church, the small business owner, and the person saying no all become obstacles. Once every limit on power is defined as an obstacle to justice, the movement stops asking how to govern within the system and starts asking how to change the system so the movement can govern without those very limits. That is the first warning. When a political movement says it needs a new constitution, a different legislature, a much weaker Supreme Court, a new presidential election system, and a new definition of democracy, that's not a housing plan. That's a plan for what they plan on doing to power once you give it to them, and they're going to take it from you and hoard it for themselves. To be clear, there are legitimate constitutional debates in America. We can debate the Electoral College. You're going to lose if we do, but we can debate it. The size of the House, judicial review, campaign finance, redistricting, the filibuster, and election laws. The problem is when all of those debates point in the same direction: less restraint on the movement, more power for the movement, fewer checks on the movement, a redesigned electorate friendlier to the movement, a weakened court system less able to stop that very movement, and a legislative structure easier for the movement to capture. That is when reform stops being reform and becomes redesign. And redesign becomes consolidation. That brings us to one of the most important planks in this whole discussion: voting rights. The DSA's democracy plank does not stop at expanding voting access for citizens. It calls for full voting rights for non-citizens as well. Well, let's just sit with that for a moment, because it changes the whole conversation. This is not merely a debate over whether somebody can find a birth certificate, whether the DMV line is too long, or whether paperwork can be made easier for eligible voters. The DSA platform says non-citizens should be able to vote too. That means the SAVE Act fight is not some random Republican obsession. It is not just a fight over forms. It is a fight over whether citizenship is still the boundary line for national self-government. American citizens should decide American elections. It's been a point of the shows that I do for a long time. That should, in fact, not be controversial at all, and yet here we are. One side saying verify citizenship. The other side is saying even non-citizens should have voting rights. Those are not two minor adjustments to the same principle. One principle says political authority belongs to the citizens of the nation. The other says the political community should be expanded beyond citizens. Combine that with the DSA immigration planks, free movement, demilitarizing the border, ending deportations and immediate amnesty. And this is not just a border reform. This is a redefinition of citizenship itself, which brings us to another important point. We have folks that are trying to make the point that all of this stuff, and I do mean all of it, is, stuff that we need to be paying attention to as a country. And instead, on our side even, we have folks that are fighting this every step of the way. This started taking shape last night, and I have a clip, if I can find it. One moment, please. Because I thought I bookmarked it. And now I can't seem to find it. Okay, so yeah, it's going to be a couple of different clips. So, okay, so let's see. Is this one? Okay, I think I found it. I'm just going to run through all of them. Some of them may be repetitive, but we're going to run through them anyway. So in regards to the SAVE Act, where did that? Oh, I think I hit the wrong button. Dang it. Hang on. Now I got to fix it. I broke something. I hate it when that happens. Remember, while you're pointing and laughing at me, I'm also my own producer. So occasionally things go sideways. Not my fault, man. It's not my fault. I mean, it kind of is since I'm my own producer, but still. All right. So let's see. That should fix that. All right. So like I said, we're just going to run through these real quick. None of them are very long, but it tells a very interesting story.
Hey guys, this is Scott Pressler. I'm here at the South Dakota State Convention. I have a ticket, and they are saying that I can't come in. So we're going to find out very shortly why I am not being allowed as one of the biggest supporters of President Donald J. Trump.
I'm big on Facebook too, and I'm the asshole saying you can't come in because guess what? You're posting this little piss and moan session on Facebook. So you just get the hell out of here. Thank you.
You see how the grassroots are welcomed in Senate Majority Leader Thune's territory. Interesting, my friends. I don't think this is a good reflection of the South Dakota GOP. But I thank him for his honesty, though. What's your Matthew Bruner, Sergeant at Arms?
So yeah, a quick update. Apparently that guy's been relieved as one of the sergeant at arms there, but that's not where this story stops. But wait, there's more. I hit the wrong button. I hate it when that happens.
Committee. No. You say, did John Thune specifically ask that Scott Pressler not attend this event? Yes. Okay, is John Thune a member of the convention committee? No. So how does he have the authority to remove people from events?
He has a nice thing. He has a...
Please let Scott Pressler in.
He has a lot of security in there, and
Is Mr. Pressler considered a security threat?
not to me, but I'm not going to go in there and argue with the Secret Service. Thank you, James.
You say, did John Thune specifically ask that?
All right, so that was the next piece. Now I saw this one this morning. Sorry, I'm going to just do this from here. Where did that one go? There it is. All right, again, this isn't a very long clip either, but here, this is proof that they were on the lookout for Scott Pressler. Kind of scary when you think about it.
So this is James Bialotta with Dead On, where it looks like there's a memorandum with Scott Pressler's picture on the first table to identify him at the door to prevent him from entering. This is the doors at the Rushmore Hall, where Scott Pressler was denied access to a ticketed event because John Thune said so.
Now, look, you can say whatever you want to say, I have never in my life met Scott Pressler. We follow each other. We've interacted a little bit on X here and there. I've never met him in my life. But I will say this, from what I have seen and from knowing how he got started to where he is today, he's one of the hardest working grassroots people in the Republican Party. And to be treated that way, all because he's trying to get the leader of the Senate to do his job, is insane to me. This, again, is, if you look at the demographics, an 80-20 issue. And I'll go even further. If you do the math, it's actually closer to 85-15, 90-10, depending on which party you're looking at. Because independents are pretty high up on wanting the same thing too. Democrats a little bit less. But almost everybody agrees you should have to be able to prove, one, that you are who you say you are before you can cast a ballot, and two, that you actually have the legal right to cast a ballot in that election. And federal elections clearly state the only people allowed to vote in those are citizens. Now, if we're going to keep having these issues where we keep fighting over who gets to vote and who doesn't get to vote, then I say citizens are the only ones that get to vote in anything anymore. And it really is just that simple. Yes, exactly, Ross. Senate Republicans are, in fact, the problem. I didn't realize that was... I saw Trump for king a second ago and wasn't paying attention to the fact that was you. Thank you for coming to hang out today. I hope you're not going to get in trouble at like work or anything, but thank you. But yeah, they are in fact a problem. And the scariest part about all this is here we are trying to stop the creep of socialism in this country, and the Republicans are fighting over their little individual fiefdoms still. So, so we're talking about the citizens need to be able to vote. We need to be able to prove citizenship to be able to vote. The DSA says, nah, let everybody vote. That's bad. That's bad. So let's start there. Don't start with the softest part of the sales pitch. Don't start with the slogan. But we know why they don't. Because if they started with the structure, the DSA platform points towards constitutional redesign, rethinking the actual machinery of our entire federal government, weakening judicial review, changing the presidential election system, and voting rights for non-citizens. That's not a tweak. That's not a pilot program. That's not a mild reform. That is a movement saying the American system itself, the one set up by our founding fathers, is in the way of what we want to do. Now, that's a scary plank. Now, remember, I'm not making this up. This is in their platform online. This is the stuff the DSA tells you they want to do. And in the words of Ron Popeil, but wait, there's more. So now let's move from the structure of government to the structure of the economy. Again, the pitch is very soft. The pitch says people are struggling and we have to help them. Housing has become way too expensive. Healthcare is a right. College debt is crushing people, and childcare is way too expensive. Working people are tired. Their pocketbooks are being squeezed. They're always stressed and always angry. That may be true. And that's why the pitch works. But the fine print, the thing we keep calling the platform, tells you what they actually want the government to do with that anger. The DSA program does not merely say, let's make capitalism more competitive. It doesn't merely say, let's reduce barriers to building. Because that whole housing thing that everybody's screaming about? We talked about this on Wednesday. You know what a lot of that is? Local, city, and state ordinances that are stopping people from being able to build. If you don't believe me, just look at what the hell's happening in California. This isn't a federal government problem. A lot of this is not. Now, you take all of this and you put it with the fact that Joe Biden let about 25 million people into the country who needed places to stay. And that leads to the very kind of crunch that we're talking about. So they don't just say, let's make capitalism more competitive. It doesn't merely say, let's reduce barriers to building. Let's do what we can to get rid of some of this cronyism that has become quite obvious and sometimes very blatant. Let's stop protecting incumbents and let's end bailouts, subsidies, regulatory capture, and government-mandated scarcity. It points instead towards public ownership and democratic control of the largest corporations. And trust me, if they get the largest corporations, they're not going to stop there. Because eventually they're going to say, all your bases belongs to us. And then they're going to tell you you will own nothing and you will like it. And that's what they're pushing towards. It points toward them wanting to take public ownership over all of our major stuff as well, including transportation, energy infrastructure. It points towards public ownership over natural resources. That's not regulating capitalism. That is replacing capitalism with a very different system. If government controls energy, transportation, natural resources, and the largest corporations, government doesn't just regulate the economy. Government becomes the economy. And if government becomes the economy, then your relationship with work, property, income, energy, housing, transportation, and production all become political points and political pawns. Private property is not just an economic arrangement. It is a political shield. There is a reason, and it's one of the only mistakes that our founding fathers made. The original draft said that all men were created equally with the rights to life and endowed with our Creator with the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. That never should have been changed because property is tangible. Property is something that you can see. Property is something that you can taste, touch, and smell. By changing it to the pursuit of happiness, it sounds really, really cool, but happiness is subjective. If you'll notice, one half of the country is only ever happy when they're in charge. The rest of us, we don't hate the country. Even when Joe Biden was running it into the ground, we didn't hate the country. We may have been calling him the potted plant, or as I called him quite often, the cauliflower in chief, but we didn't hate the country. We didn't hate Barack Obama. We were pointing out that, ironically enough, in 2009, when racism should have officially died in this country, it became an even bigger monster, which makes no sense until you start getting a peek behind the scenes at the people that were fomenting all this stuff. And now you start seeing everything that's coming out from folks like the DSA, from folks like SPLC, from folks like USAID, that were actually feeding the very monster they were claiming that they were created to fight. But all of this becomes political pawns because if you can't own anything, guess what? If you own nothing, that means when you piss off the government, they can turn off your car. When you piss off the government, they can take your house away. I need you to think about this from this perspective, just for a second. And I know I'm really long. I don't care. I need you to think about this from this perspective. When the DSA gets control, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Because at some point, folks like me, and even folks with bigger microphones than mine, again, take that however you wish, aren't standing on our little mountains or molehills anymore, screaming and yelling about, hey, this is a really bad idea. This is a really bad idea. Eventually, they're going to win. And they know that because now they're James Carville's going to be dead in like 5 minutes. So we'll just wait for him to croak over. You know, when you've lost the raging Cajun, though, that should tell you something. When James Carville is looking at the DSA-backed candidates and going, don't you guys already have your own party? What the hell are you doing in mine? Because he said start your own party, but the truth of it is they have one. Democratic Socialist of America is a separate party. If I were the Democratic powerful folks, the beautiful people, so to speak, the first thing I would say is you can't be part of our group anymore. You are not a registered Democrat. You're a registered Democratic Socialist. No. But you know what? They won't. Because beating Trump is more important. The scariest part is, and Ross said this the other day, not trying to give him too much credit, so if he's still in the chat, don't tell him I said anything. But Ross said this the other day. In point of fact, they've already pretty much beaten Trump. Everything Trump has been able to do has been done through executive order. And most everything Trump has done, judges have come back against the executive orders and said, no, you can't do that. And eventually the Supreme Court usually has to weigh in. And sometimes he wins, sometimes he loses. We saw some pretty big wins this past week with the Supreme Court, like reinstating the temporary protection status, because, all of a sudden the left is like, no, that means forever. You guys don't understand temporary. It's not that they don't understand what the word means. They just don't care. Because again, most of them, even the ones that are screaming about it right now, are secretly hoping that they can retake the House and retake the Senate and retake the presidency in a couple more years. And if they do that, if they can do that, they don't care how they get there. They don't care that it's basically a Faustian deal that will basically be the death knell of their party eventually, because it's all about Trump. You can see it in my chat all the time. When YouTube starts popping off, we get, pardon me, we get people showing up and popping off about how bad Trump is and F Trump and F this and F that. Again, y'all realize he's gone in like 3 years, right? And we're already fighting over who's going to replace him. But that's fine. My party's used to that. You guys aren't. I don't know where you guys go from here, because y'all are so used to, can't we all just get along, that you guys are rolling over for the commies. Anyway, we are really long. I'm going to go ahead and take the top of the hour break. I haven't even finished hour one notes yet, but such is life. My name is Rick Robinson. This is my show. We will be back for hour two and possibly a little bit more. We were supposed to do a weekend news roundup, but I keep forgetting everybody's summer schedules are all nuts. So, yeah. Amy just got back from Egypt. Brad's not allowed to have a life of his own during the summer, and I haven't heard from BZ yet. So once I know, y'all will know, but apparently I have more than enough notes to do 3 hours anyway. So as long as my voice holds. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
They tried to quench the fire, drown it all in chains, tried to break our will and wash away our names. But every spark they buried only fed the flame. Now the cry of freedom's roaring through the rain. Hear the cry of freedom on the winds of change. Every voice united, breaking every chain. We were born to stand and never bow again.
Remember when entertainment was actually entertaining? When comedy was about being funny, movies were about telling great stories, and you didn't need a political lecture every time you hit play. Great entertainment still exists, it's just getting harder to find. Even the biggest streaming platforms leave audiences disappointed. That's why there's Studio TST, pure entertainment, real comedy, independent films, bold creators, movies, comedy, music, and more, and the home of fearless sketch comedy. That show tonight, entertainment the way you want it. Funny, creative, unapologetic, and agenda-free. Studio TST, the future of entertainment starts here. Join Studio TST today for just $5 a month.
Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
In uncertain times, we could use someone to lean on. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma will stand by you with plan options to fit your budget. If you've recently lost your job, had a baby, or moved, you can still get the healthcare coverage you and your family need. Financial help may be available for those who qualify. Call 855-452-BLUE or visit hereforyouok.com to see if you're eligible to enroll. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma, a division of Healthcare Service Corporation, a mutual legal reserve company.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Got a vendetta. Coffee tastes like bad decisions I ain't made yet. Boss man talking about we got her, and that means me, brother. Afraid I got a terminal case of the I don't want us. Mind checked out, heart ain't in the building. That second hand's crawling like it hates my guts. The man treating rich like it's a sin. Even God took a beat. So, suck it. Thank God it's Friday, punching out loud. Hands in the air, middle finger to 9 to 5. Bill still waiting, but tonight I don't care. Cold beer sermon and a bar stool prayer. Take this job and shove it, I quit. Till Monday. Cause tonight I'm free. Yeah, work and wait. It ain't owning me. So raise them up high. Let the whistle blow. Thank God it's Friday.
And welcome back into the program, ladies and gentlemen. It looks like this one might be an extended one. My voice is still holding out, and I haven't heard from anybody in the Weekend News Roundup crew. So even if they decide to join in, I may just drop them this link and keep going with what I'm talking about, because I got to get through this. This was all supposed to be Wednesday's show. And then I realized I overprepared, and the first hour of notes lasted for 2, and I didn't have enough voice to keep going. So anyway. All right, so we're going to keep going here. Want to give a quick shout out to some of the folks hanging out in the chat. Hey, BZ is available. So at least I know I got one. The other 2 still semi-questionable. So yeah, I don't know. We may just bring him in at some point if I don't hear from anybody else and just keep rolling in his feet. And then maybe separate it out later if it actually turns into a legitimate one. I don't know. Anyway, so again, when they try to tell you in their own platform, now, again, this isn't me, and welcome back into the program, by the way. This is officially the unofficial, supposed to be the top of the hour. Haven't even made it through the first full hour of notes yet, though, and we're already at almost a minute or an hour and 30. So, yeah, fun times. But, yeah, so anyway. So, when they tell you they want to control all the things, you should probably start listening. Because, again, private property is a shield. Your small business is your own independence. Your land that you own is independence, unless you live in a state where they charge you property taxes, because then you're still basically a serf paying your lord for permission to use your own property. Just saying, your ability to run your own household is your own independence. Your ability to sell your labor, market your skills, build your business, own your home, choose your work, and keep the fruit of your labor is a barrier between you and the state. And remember, they keep saying all your bases are belong to us. So they want to remove all those barriers. Socialism as state power wants to shrink that barrier, if not completely remove it. It says the economy should be democratized. That sounds kind of nice. But what does that mean exactly? When government and political bodies control the major economic assets, what does dissent cost when your job, housing, healthcare, energy, transportation, school, and future all depend on institutions controlled by the same political worldview? What happens when the people who promised fairness also control the bank, the business, the permit, the regulator, the union, the court, the schools, the health system, and all of the speech rules? If you're lucky enough to have them at all. That is not freedom. That is dependency with a catchy slogan. And then comes all of the universal promises. Medicare for all, with no premiums, no copays, no deductibles, tuition-free public higher education, no more student debt because they're just going to cancel it because it's all free now anyway. Universal rent control, free universal childcare and pre-K, paid family leave, and a 32-hour work week with no reduction in pay or benefits. I understand why those promises sound good. If you are struggling with medical bills, no premiums, no copays, no deductibles, that sounds wonderful. If you're buried in student loan, debt cancellation sounds like it's going to give you some breathing room. If you're working and trying to pay for childcare at the same time, free universal childcare sounds like relief. If rent is eating your paycheck, rent control sounds like someone finally noticed. If you are burned out at a 32-hour work week with no cut in pay, sounds like a dream. This is why conservatives can't just sneer at this stuff anymore. The pressure points are real. And even if we don't see them that way, you guys have to remember, especially in today's modern world, perception is in fact reality. So because these people are buying into these things, that is their reality. That's why half the country thinks America sucks unless their side is in charge. Because to these people, the costs are real, and that's not necessarily imaginary either. Things have gotten a hell of a lot more expensive ever since somebody talked a Republican into taking us off the gold standard. That's right, I said a Republican. The stress is sometimes real, sometimes perceived, but reality doesn't vanish because a platform calls something a right. Every promise has a cost. Every cost lands somewhere. If the platform refuses to talk honestly about the trade-offs, it is not compassion, it's a marketing scam. Free does not mean free. It means the cost moves to taxes, debt, inflation, rationing, shortages, lower investment, fewer providers, less innovation, political control, waiting lists, price caps, hidden subsidies, bureaucracy, and eventually gets passed on to your children and your future grandchildren and great-grandchildren. The platform reads like a national wish list written by people who believe scarcity is a capitalist conspiracy. But scarcity is in fact real. Time, labor, doctors, nurses, homes, land, materials, energy, money, attention, and competence are all scarce, especially that last one. Remember when your grandparents used to say common sense is not always a flower that grows in everyone's garden or something similar? Remember when competence was the rule, not the exception? You can change the label of scarcity and start calling it injustice for only so long before the bill actually finally comes due. And when the bill comes due, socialism has a habit of blaming enemies. The person who's hoarding all the things. If you don't believe me, just look at how the socialist left is treating Elon Musk, and just remember, until a few years ago, Elon Musk was their darling. The hoarder, the profiteer, the landlord. Speaking of which, that Chevalier chick, the one who's running on, you will own nothing and you will like it. Her dad's a landlord. It's funny how that always pops up somewhere. We don't want anybody to own anything but the government, but my dad's a landlord. But after that list, the list goes further. The capitalist becomes the bad guy. The market speculator becomes the bad guy. Then, if they haven't already demonized them, the corporation, the foreign agent, the saboteur, the misinformation spreader. Remember how much that happened under COVID? Misinformation spreader. Guess what? Almost everything that we were told was misinformation, not so much. There's always somebody to blame when the promises fail, and it's never them. Politicians, and especially socialist politicians, have a lot of the same traits as narcissists. Nothing can ever possibly be their fault because they told you what they were going to do. They did what they were going to do, but they didn't understand or didn't care that eventually there were going to be consequences. And if there were, those consequences aren't their fault. Remember when I mentioned housing earlier? Because housing is actually the perfect example of what we're talking about. We talked about this on Wednesday with zoning, permitting, density, zoning problems, permitting problems, density rules, parking requirements, environmental studies, neighborhood vetoes. And let's not forget all the Karens and all the HOAs across America, and all the ways government restricts supply and then blames capitalism for scarcity. I'm not going to rerun that entire section because that actually took a lot. The Friday point is simpler. Universal rent control may sound like relief, but if supply does not grow, rent control does not solve scarcity. It freezes scarcity. It creates winners and losers, people inside controlled units and people locked outside of them. It can reduce incentives to maintain units, reduce incentives to build, and turn housing into a political lottery. Then when the shortage gets worse, government says, see, the market failed again. That means we need more control from you. But see, by then, they won't even have to ask you for it because they'll just take it. That's the cycle. Government restricts supply. Prices rise. Socialists blame the market. Government caps the price. Supply gets worse. Socialists blame greed. Government demands more control. That is how a crisis becomes a pretext. There's a reason the Democratic slogan, unofficially, has been never let a good crisis go to waste for quite a while now. Because I know they're all screaming, about we're a big tent, it's okay, we'll coexist, or, how bad it is the DSA won so big in Gotham on Tuesday. That's what they're saying aloud. Their behavior shows you much of a different story. Because this very thing that we're talking about is how they operate. They use government to restrict supply. Prices rise. Then the socialist wing blames the market. Government caps the price to try to quiet the socialist side of the party. Then they blame the supply issues. And that's when everybody, including the Democrats, start talking about how greedy everybody is. And then start saying, see, we need more control because we got to go after these greedy folks. So this is where the platform for the DSA, and no, I said DSA, not DSLs. Some of you got that joke. Some of you didn't. Just saying. This is where the platform becomes even clearer, because once you move beyond economics, you start seeing the full worldwide view on immigration. The DSA platform points towards free movement, demilitarization of the border, because who needs those imaginary lines? Ending immigrant detention, ending deportations completely, immediate amnesty for all immigrants, regardless of status, and access to jobs, labor rights, and social services for all immigrants. Pair that with voting rights for non-citizens, and the picture gets much clearer. But this is, again, when I have to ask the question, where the hell is John Thune and the Republicans? The House did their job. They have passed the SAVE Act multiple times. And you're telling me that you can't even put it up for an actual filibuster? You're just going to let them use the snooze alarm filibuster version? Now, look, I get it. If we have to go full filibuster, there's no way it's going to be in place in time for this election cycle. And that is exactly why you guys keep pushing for this. To delay it as long as you can. At some point, you're going to give in. But by then, well, we were finally able to get it passed, but there's not going to be any way we're going to be able to use it for the midterms. And then there'll be all the court fights and everything else for the next 2 years after that will probably stop it from being used for the national election 2 years later. And the Democrats will have won. The socialists will have won. And the thing that we tried to stop when we finally woke up and realized how terrible Hillary Clinton was going to be, some of us figured it out too late. I'm willing to admit that, because Trump scared me more at the time. But it'll be too late. This is not just, can we make the immigration system more humane? Because that can and should be a legitimate debate. This is not just, can we fix legal immigration? Also a legitimate debate. This is not just, can we deal with people who were brought here as children? That is a debate this country has had for years. But when you combine non-citizen voting rights, immediate amnesty, and end to deportations, demilitarized borders, free movement, and social services for all immigrants, you're no longer talking about border reform. You're talking about no borders at all with redefined citizenship. Citizenship is not just about paperwork. Citizenship is political membership. It is the line that says this is the people who can choose the government of the nation. This is the people to whom the government is supposed to be accountable. And this is the people whose consent gives the government legitimacy. If citizenship becomes optional, blurry, or political inconvenient, and for one half of the country it already is, then self-government gets blurry with it. That is why the SAVE Act fight matters. The DSA platform says non-citizens should, in fact, be able to vote, not only in local elections where they, we can have that discussion. I understand why people that have green cards that are here legally, in most cities and states, get to vote in certain elections, like school boards and trash votes and all those things, because those things directly impact them and they are here legally. But for the rest, they want them to be able to vote for everything. The SAVE Act, again, says citizenship should be verified. That's not just paperwork. That's the dividing line. Then there is policing and public order. The platform talks about treating addiction as a health issue, abolishing mandatory minimums, ending cash bail, and demilitarizing police. Some of those debates are real debates. Addiction needs treatment. Mental health matters. Again, I know now that this is now an engineering problem rather than an imagination problem. Somebody who's about to invent a time machine is probably listening to this show. When you do, first you go back to the 60s and tell Reagan not to sign the gun law BS. Then you go forward to the 80s and tell him not to get rid of the asylums. Just saying. And again, these are all real debates. over-incarceration can be debated. We probably do need to have a serious discussion about the privately owned for-profit prisons, because that never seemed like a good idea to me. But then again, I believe there are a lot of things that should have never been considered for-profit, medicine being one of them. All right, so we're long, and I still have to do the military tribute. I am going to try to get through as much as I can of this, but some of this may hold over until Monday. I know, this has been like the longest show theme ever. I guess there's enough repetition in even the stuff that I'm putting in the YouTube comments that YouTube said, yeah, we're not letting you monetize this one. This is some of the same crap you talked about last time. We don't do this repetitive stuff anymore. But it's not. But then again, I don't really care because YouTube's retarded. All right, military tribute break coming at you. We'll be right back.
Before the oath was spoken out loud, before you stood apart from the crowd, there was a moment, quiet and clear, when you chose to stand while others stayed here. You raised your hand with a steady resolve, knowing some nights don't end when the mission's done. Not for glory, not for the pay, but for something worth more than walking away.
Only hold the line.
They carried the weight where the roads ran long, through dust and heat
When the days went on,
holding ground mile after mile, doing the
work that rarely drew a smile.
They stood their post when relief ran late, shoulders squared under the pull of fate.
Not chasing headlines, not asking why, just staying put when others pass by. We stand and watch in different ways, different nights, the same long days. One old spoken carried through, wherever duty calls us to.
We stand watch over the deep. They kept their watch where the water turns black, miles from shore with no quick way back, measuring time by the rise and the fall, answering duty's unrelenting call. Through silent hours and endless seas, they stood their post in the cold night breeze, guarding the lanes the world depends on, so others slept and the light stayed on. We stand the watch in different ways, different nights, the same long days. One old spoken carried through, wherever duty calls us to. Simplify Marine,
We go where we're sent. We go where we're sent.
they moved as one when the moment came, side by side through fire and rain. First to step where the ground was thin, not for the odds but for the ones beside them.
Trust was earned in the hard way through, every promise carried by the few. No turning back once the line was crossed.
They stood shoulder to shoulder as brothers,
Never counting the cost. We stand the watch in different ways, different nights, the same long days.
one old spoken carried through, wherever duty calls us to. Air Force,
The sky is our domain.
Air Force, their focus where seconds seem eternal, soaring between clouds and blue. Every movement measured and true, knowing what one clean moment could do.
They watch the whole while guarding the small. Every mission tied to a larger call. Calm under pressure, steady and clear, keeping the promise from far overhead.
Space Force,
we guard the dark without
they
faith.
keep their vigil
Where silence reigns,
beyond the weather,
beyond the rain.
watching the paths that the world relies on, long before the warning lights come on.
Cloud, no banners, no clear view.
Just constant care in a canvas full of stars,
Standing the watch through the endless night,
guarding the systems that keep us in light. While the watch is kept and the lines hold fast, there are lives still moving on the other side of that.
empty chairs and quiet phones, long goodbyes that don't feel done.
Names we carry but never say, folded flags and debts we pay. Every service, every scar reaches farther than the uniform ever could.
Coast Guard, we come when it matters most.
They launch into storms when hope feels thin. Turning back isn't an option then. Hands reach out where the waters rise, pulling lives back from the edge of time. No headlines waiting when the call is done, just breathing restored and another life won. Every rescue, every return, a quiet promise kept in the worst conditions. We stand the watch in different ways, different nights, the same long days. One unspoken carry through, wherever duty calls us to. For the ones who raised the right hand high,
Swore the oath and didn't ask us why.
for the nights you stood where freedom cost.
We remember, we honor, we won't forget the loss.
From the ground to the sea to the open sky, to the guardians above where the silent stars fly. Every branch, every badge, every battle scar, because you stood.
We live free.
Lord, each know.
We stand here freely.
Because others stood before us. We accept the weight of what was given and the cost that came with it. We promise to remember those who serve, those who stand watch still, and those who never came home.
And welcome back into the program, ladies and gentlemen. And oddly enough, the more I've talked today, the better my voice has gotten. Maybe I was just being too quiet. Hell, I don't know anymore. But yeah, old lady who jacked my keys somewhere in my house. If you're still listening, I would like those back. There are 2 sets. You could have just hid one of them from me. Jesus. Yeah, there's a long-running joke in my house that we got it for as cheaply as we did because it was haunted. I always thought of it as a joke until yesterday. So, for those of you who don't know, I spent all day a couple of Saturdays ago at the lake with a bunch of my grandgremlins. Apparently, one of them had the crud, and nobody told me. So after spending all day with them and them climbing all over me and all this other stuff, apparently I brought the crud home with me. And of course, my kids are all still fairly young, so their immune system is awesome. Mine, not so much. So by Friday, I started feeling a little run down. Did most of the things. Actually, I think Friday was the first time in a while I did all the things. And then Saturday, I felt like, poof. So I haven't been anywhere since last Thursday. Last I knew, keys were on my nightstand. One set of keys were on my nightstand. The other one was on the hook in the living room because I have two sets. Daughter and granddaughter left on Monday. Keys were where they were supposed to be. Got up to go run errands yesterday and realized I don't know where either set of my keys are. So either my middle son, who's still here, is trolling me, or the joke about why I got my house so cheap might not actually be a joke. I don't really know which one's going on, but something's happening. Anyway, so welcome back into the program, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I have made an executive decision because while my voice is doing better, I don't want to stress it because today kind of scared me because when I got up this morning, I could barely talk at all. So I think what we're going to do instead, because I still have almost another, hour and 15 minutes worth of notes. Yes, I just had my little assistant running what I had left through there. They're like, yeah, with the way you normally talk and all the clips you like to play, you're probably looking at about another hour and 15 minutes. I'm like, I'm not doing that. So what we're going to do instead, since BZ says he's available, is here in just a minute. We'll go ahead and change things over to the Weekend News Roundup. I just haven't decided if I'm going to change feeds to do that or if we're just going to change in here and I can chop it up later. I think we might just change in here and chop it up later. So I will probably send him the other link in a moment to make life easier. And that way, if anybody else wants to join in, they can. But before we went to break, we were talking about how they want to take over everything. And if you think I'm kidding, here's a very short clip that tells you that I'm not.
My hot take is we need to abolish pre-check. I've got like a million beefs with the airline industry and the process of having to fly. We need to nationalize the airline industry. But let's start by abolishing. My hot take is we need to abolish pre-check.
So I'm kind of okay with that part of the hot take. It's this part.
I've got like a million beefs with the airline industry and the process of having to fly. We need to nationalize the airline industry.
So again, they want control of transportation, energy, news, information, government, all of it. Guess what? If we let them have that, they're eventually going to be able to tell you where you can live, where you can work, and if you disagree with them at all and they find out, they will take it all away from you. Now, I will say this, because BZ played this clip last night, and it made me laugh a little bit when I realized the name of the podcast she was on. As a guy who was always trying to figure out the best way to market stuff, that is actually a terrible yet awesome name at the same time. It's kind of like when I saw the graphic for the fact that all the host countries for the World Cup this year have made it in the finals. They did the first letter of each one of the countries' names. However, it is very common for America to be called America, not the United States. But when they had the images of their, I guess, probably their best players or whatever, with the letter C for Canada, U for United States, M for Mexico, C-U-M. Whoever did that is either an idiot or a marketing savant or possibly both. Because, yeah. Oof. Anyway, so yeah, I kind of like this name of the podcast. I kind of get where they're going with it. And I'm again, I get in trouble for the shit I say on YouTube, and they're streaming a podcast called The Habituation Room on YouTube. On YouTube. Just saying. All right. So we're down to the last few minutes before I bring BZ on. Let me go ahead and just ship him the link to this one because I think I'm just going to leave it live. I can trim things out later. Trim. Where did my chat go? I hate it when that happens. Anyway, it'll be back in a second. Maybe. There it goes. Okay. So, yeah, I knew it'd come back eventually. But yeah, no, I mean, look, the thing about it is, and I think BZ may have just been about to say something similar, but I clicked off. Um, so okay, so anyway, sorry, I had to take care of that. But yeah, I think he may have been about to make a very similar point. Yeah, he pretty much did. So let me just put that on the screen. Plus, it gave me an excuse to mute and cough. I can't believe our nation is falling before our very eyes, and we are more interested in playing by the Marquis of Queensberry rules. Are being stupid in the face of eventual death is remarkably ridiculous. I've been saying much the same, my friend, much the same. All right, let me fix this so you can be on the screen with me too, since you are still the floating head of doom. And your mic should be hot now, sir.
Floating head, I'm nothing but a spare human. Floating
You know what?
head, floating head.
I'm glad you did that because it brought something back to my attention. I have to do a retraction of something I said on the Jen and Rick show last night because I got hit by a parody account. Apparently, there was a story going around that Mom Donnie had a larger than usual cameo in the new Spider-Man, and I fell for it and didn't realize that it wasn't the Talking Film account. It was the Talking Fish account. Bastards.
Damn, there I was trying to be brilliant and then overruled by bluff. Damn me. When will I awaken?
That was still awesome. I have to give you credit for that. That was pretty damn awesome. But yeah, you also triggered the fact that I hadn't done my on-air retraction yet for something I said last night. It was like, oh, that's the Spider-Man theme. Tom Holland got played. Got to talk about that.
Or
anyway,
The Simpsons, Spider Pig does whatever a Spider Pig can.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned the Simpsons and the Spider Pig thing because, you know, the Spider-Man into the multiverse thing kind of stole from that because there actually was a Spider Pig. I didn't think about that just now.
Spider Pig?
Yep.
And then Homer Simpson holds a pig upside down in his house as the pig makes contact with the ceiling and sings, Spider Pig does whatever a Spider Pig can.
That's actually not a bad Homer impression. I'm proud of you, sir. That's pretty good.
I won't be here all night. I'll be sleepy time.
Well, yeah, I'm actually with you telling me you didn't even go to bed till the sun came up. I'm surprised you're up already. But thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
So yeah, instead of doing the whole change order and everything, I just figured I think it may just wind up being me and you anyway. So we'll just talk about all the stuff from here. So yeah, I mean, you know, this has turned into basically what will wind up being a 6-hour show by the time I'm done, and it was only supposed to be 2.
Holy moly!
Because I keep finding new things to add to it, and I think the funniest thing for me is watching folks like Carvel going, "Yeah, this isn't my party anymore. Start your own."
Wasn't that great? I played that last night, and I'm thinking, okay, the Ragin' Cajun #1 is entertaining as hell anyway. No, that's a given, right? But then you have James Carville sitting in front of the camera and saying, well, it's not my party anymore. Was it ever? Bill Clinton is so yesterday now. That's like trying to bring back JFK. If you brought back JFK, there's no way in hell he'd be accepted into the Democrat Party. Clearly, period. End of statement. And now with the things that he liked and advocated for, I'm not sure he'd be accepted into the Republican Party.
Well, I mean, I talked about this on with Gene and Ross on Wednesday night. Everybody talks about how, oh my God, the Republican or the Democratic Party's gone so far left. Nobody talks about how far left we've gone, that now the Republicans of today sound like Bill Clinton from the 90s. We sound like Chuck Schumer from the 90s.
You know, I said last night, frankly, I have to be honest. I'm glad my grandparents are gone. Well, they died many decades ago because I'm that old. Grandma died. Grandpa died in 76 or 75, and grandma died in 79. And then my mom died in '02. Dad died in '09. Now, if that were your situation, Rick, and let's say your grandparents, your parents died that long ago, and then however possible, they came back and they're sitting in your living room and watching your TV and reading stuff on the internet. Now, go ahead and try to explain to them 2026 United States of America. Try to explain to them what they're seeing, what they're hearing, what they're watching, and in this case, what my father died for while fighting in World War II. Explain that to them. How would you do that? It's insanity writ large.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I mean, I wouldn't even know how.
That's why I'm becoming more primarily convinced that what you're seeing as a result from leftists, Democrat socialists, they're not socialists. They're out and out commies. That's parsing the word. Eventually they're going to get there if they're not there already. And it's just they're not ready to use that word yet. But this is what you get when you got a takeover of education by leftists, I don't know, 70 years ago. The people that are responding and living now to that, they got absolutely zero association with history. They don't just have historical Alzheimer's, because at one point you had to have an inkling of history. They have no association with history whatsoever. They got no perspective. They are ignorant idiots. Thanks, education. Period.
Well, yeah, but that's unfortunately by design.
It is.
It's working.
It's clearly by design, and it's working. Ross and Chet says, and he's right. Dems are okay. Yes and no. He says Dems are fucked. They miss every chance to stop insanity from taking over their party. They knew what was in the Trojan horse, and they still let it through the gate. Now they are hostages to the communists. Well, number one, communists, yes. And number two, are they really screwed? I think we screwed ourselves. And I think at this point, unless something shocking occurs, that we'll lose November. Now, you lose the House and you lose the Senate, and nothing will get done. And it will be a complete replay of 45 of suits, impeachment. Nothing will get done at one of the most critical times of the United States. I said in chat also, I'm watching this. You're watching this. Everybody's watching this. Our nation is falling right in front of our eyes on the internet, on TV, on social media. And as you mentioned earlier, we're more interested in playing, well, we really must be considerate. We're being stupid in the face of eventual death of Western civilization. It's happening in Europe, and they want it to happen here. And we continue to refuse to believe what these assholes are telling us to our face. Muslims, we're going to kill you. Commies, yeah, we're going to take over everything. And why do we refuse? Because we think everyone thinks like us. That would be so harsh, so judgmental. No, it's reality. Wake up. November, at this point, absent something else, done, gone. And we did it to ourselves. Comma, you fucktard, John Thune et al. And I'm also to the point where, what's going to save us? A good civil war.
I mean, look,
Or we lose.
yeah, I mean, the thing about it is, I'm not so sure about November, not quite yet. Now, as far as them finding a way to cheat, the problem with that is that works really well in national level elections. It's gotten a lot harder in in state level elections because a lot of the places they were able to cheat in 20 have fixed a lot of it. So I'm not that worried about the midterms yet because even the stuff the Democrats are trying to push as, see, here's proof that we're gonna take it back, is only like 43% are now predicting a Democrat landslide. That means 57% are saying probably not. So that's not what you think it is. So yeah, I'm more worried about if we don't get the Save America Act passed. I'm more worried about them starting to take everything back in 28 because it becomes a lot easier to steal an election when the focus is on the national level stuff.
Oh, they'll start in 27. Here's what I'm discovering. This is no shock. I live in Idaho. I live in North Idaho. Idaho is supposed to be red. What I discovered when I got here is all this Republican crap, it's really confusing. What I later sussed out after talking to a number of people that are conservatives that have been here for a number of years, decades, in fact, is that leftists have infected and infiltrated most every Republican Party, PAC, organization, and they're not conservative anymore. So I'm thinking, sitting on my ass, if this is happening in Idaho, I wonder if it's happening in other allegedly red states. They're smearing the line, and that is with purpose. We're getting people in certain towns that are saying, you know what? We need flock cameras. We need a surveillance state. You know what? We need a data center right in the smack of everywhere. We don't have the electricity to power it or the water at this point. And then there's a little teeny town right across the way from us, Rathdrum. Their city council, 3 people like the people of Avenal, the 3 people that sit on that council, or 4 or 5, I don't know specifically, in against the wishes of everyone in that little teeny town, said, okay, let's have more development. Now, already when that happens, there wasn't enough shit capacity for the city of Rathdrum. Their sewer system, their infrastructure can't even support the number of people they have there. Their water problems are legion. They don't have enough pressure, and they're building more because some more of these allegedly conservative assholes got paid under the table. You know, I'm done with being kind. I'm done with being nice or conciliatory. This is an infection that needs to be ripped out and killed. You know, like Iran, I think that's a terrible issue with Trump. I couldn't disagree more with Trump. There's something, I don't know if anybody knows this. Remember Fallujah? Remember when our soldiers were hung from bridges? And certain personnel said, okay, you know what I want you to do? Because this is what actually happened. I spoke to people about this when they came to work for me, back from the sand pit in Iraq. This is how we responded to Fallujah. Nobody knows this. First, we gave notice to the people that were there. And then after a period of time, we went door to door and killed every male, every one, dead. If they could, they shot him in the head. Problem? That means boots on the ground. But it also means a lack of political will. Our hesitation to do what's necessary, unlike Islam, unlike communism, will be our undoing. Period. You want to think that we're sufficiently smart to see this, and people are telling us things to our eyes, spittle flecking our faces, and we think, no, that can't be really what they mean, is it?
You know, one of these days you're going to have to learn to tell people what you really think.
I'm done sugarcoating stuff. I'm done. Our country is in jeopardy. Our way of life is in jeopardy. Our rights are in jeopardy. Our liberties are in jeopardy. And, hey, Pastor Niemöller comes to mind, as it should.
Okay, so for those who don't get that reference, you might want to explain.
Geez, where do I start? Pastor Niemöller was a gentleman who was, let's see, I think this was the 40s or something like that. It came into some kind of a poetic form of around like 44, 45, 46 prose from this guy named Martin Niemöller, who was a German pastor, maybe Lutheran, something like that. And what it does is it basically condemns the complicity of German intellectuals and clergy, and I'm pointing my fingers at all you religious fucks out there, following the Nazis' rise to power. And it's, I think it's called like First They Came, and I'm going to be paraphrasing. And it's, okay, first they came, meaning the Germans, for the socialists. And I didn't speak out. I wasn't a socialist. And then they came for the second one is trade people. Oh, well, I didn't speak out. I wasn't a trade guy. And then they came for the Jews, Juden. And I didn't speak out. I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for me. And there was nobody absolutely left to speak for me. One by one, they're striated out of existence. That's essentially the Martin Niemöller Holocaust, I guess, poem, if you will.
Yeah, no, and it is. It's used all the time. I mean, there's lots of leftists that are using that now because of all the rounding people up. First they came for the migrants, and I blah blah blah. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, big difference is we have a country to hold.
Well, yeah, and I mean the thing about it is they keep trying to sell this as if it's a compassion issue, but here's the thing, and I will even say this about James Carville. Until 5 seconds ago, he was perfectly fine being in bed with the commies.
Sure he was. He's a direct representation of Martin Niemöller. Well, I was fine with all this other crap because, hey, that's me. I'm winning here. Until I realized finally that I'm starting to lose, and this crap isn't me.
Well, that's the other reason why I'm still honestly trying to hold out hope for November. I mean, I get it. The odds were already stacked against us. We haven't been able to do enough. And, again, not trying to give Ross too much credit, but he pointed out on Wednesday night, all these folks screaming and yelling about how they're going to stop Trump. They've already effectively stopped Trump, and our side won't help us not let them stop him because everything he's been able to do has basically been done through executive order yet again. And you've got folks like John Thune who keep saying we don't have the votes for it. Well, you know what? If you don't have the votes for it, then put it on the floor and do an actual filibuster and let people see who is fighting against it so we know who to take care of when it comes to be election time. Again, assuming we still have that option. And then you've got, I think it was Corwin, one of the guys who's not in anything anymore, was like, well, even if we did the filibuster, here's historical proof of how the filibuster won't help. I'm like, okay, so here's my problem with that. You obviously don't want this thing to pass. You say this isn't going to help it pass. So prove your point. Vote for the filibuster.
You're not even interested in trying. Now, we had the opportunity. We had many opportunities to take and refused to do it. Did you hear the newest? Rick Robinson of KLRN from South Dakota.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Pressler being denied entry to a dinner that he paid for a ticket for. Yeah, that was fun. Okay.
The deal is that the South Dakota GOP basically took Scott Pressler, who I think confidently say by just his work only turned an entire state for President Trump. That's more than all the GOP did in that state. Period. End of statement. Oh, well, Scott Pressler's long haired. Oh, well, Scott Pressler is gay. Oh, well, Scott Pressler just delivered results that almost no one else on the Republican Party did. So, what did the South Dakota GOP do? Scott Pressler came and then they trespassed him from its own convention. He had a paid ticket and everything else because, wait for it, he deigned to criticize John Thune on Facebook. There's some guy named Matt Bruner in South Dakota. Kicked Scott out because of his criticisms for Thune's abject failure to pass the Save America Act. What the hell, GOP?
Yeah, I mean, and Ross just pointed out in the chat, if you were a gay lib, the news would be all over this. But since he's gay Republican, but that's the other problem. Because I just saw a story coming out in Texas, kind of the same thing, where there was somebody who was trying to help with GOP related stuff and was actually on the payroll, and turns out a complaint was filed because of their sexuality, and people were complaining that they weren't on the payroll. They assumed it was a Democrat troll. Guess what? It wasn't. It was somebody within the GOP, because we still have people that that can't get on board with that part of it, whatever the case may be. And I think that's kind of what Scott ran into last night in South Dakota, because the guy that you just talked about, the guy that's been made famous, they got all the still shots of him with his, all 4'11" of himself with his cowboy hat on. Yeah, he got fired today from it. Well, removed from his sergeant at arms position. Anyway, I don't know about fired.
But folks, who was it back in 2016 that said regarding the Republicans, I'm not convinced Trump is necessarily a Republican. I believe he loves America. He's screwing up on many levels, but even that kind of sort of is immaterial. But what did he say back in 2015, 2016? He said, our Republican tent is big enough for people to come in. And why haven't we been asking everyone to come in? So now, do we, and say what you will about gays, Scott Pressler is not some drag queen. Scott Pressler, so what do we have now? Do we have purity tests for the GOP? Do you have to hand over your DNA now before you can enter the GOP? Well, we don't like what you said about one of our members, and your ass is kicked out. Hello, take German Luger, point it to your temple, and pull. All it takes is about, 6 pounds of pressure. And they're doing it. It's like, just like you can't hate the American media maggots enough. It's like, how did we get to the point where I'm even considering saying you can't hate the Republicans enough? I'm going to go back to the 1960s in my civics class. Mr. Helms said the only thing I remembered from high school, besides art, because I used to be a bit of an artiste back then. I even applied to the Joe Kubert School of Cartooning and was accepted for that, and then had to take a real job because it was a lot of money, and I wasn't making any money at the time. But Mr. Helms said, hey, this is a truism. True then now, true then in the 60s. He said, Democrats don't win elections. Republicans lose them. When will you ever come to your senses? I don't get this. And like Muslims and commies, they're telling this to our collective faces, and still people on the Republican side, allegedly conservative, but not, are saying, no, that's not, you can't, no, you don't really mean that. Oh, most people don't think that way, which means you can't be thinking that way. And we're going to have a nice cup of tea, a nice cup of chai at a nice even table. And if we sit down and discuss things, we'll be able to work out an option, won't we? Like Trump with Iran. No, we won't.
Yeah, no, I wish, but no. But yeah, no, I mean, so believe it or not, there has at least been a little bit of good news, and it's causing Democratic weeping and gnashing of teeth. So they've reinstated the word temporary and temporary protective status, unless you listen to Ron Mondami, because yeah, he's still vowing to protect them. So you're gonna violate the Supreme Court? That's funny. You call Trump a terrorist every time you think he's gonna do that. But yeah, so they reinstated the word temporary to protective status, which I knew it was bad. I didn't know how bad it was until I saw the left trying to justify the fact that things need to stay the way they are by pointing out that some people have been here on temporary protective status since the 90s. I'm like,
decades.
That's the farthest thing from temporary ever. You're only proving our point. Some of these, so remember like that big ass hurricane that was in some third world country back in the 90s and a bunch of people that were affected by it came over here? Yeah, those people, a lot of those people stayed. It was a hurricane. That is the most temporary reason to flee. And they've been here since the 90s. So yeah, I'm just yeah,
but again, I go back, and despite all my snickety picketies with regard to President Trump, I think he truly is working for this country as best he can. Nobody's perfect. There is no single perfect presidential candidate except me, and I'm not running. And so, given that, he's the best we've got. And everybody says, well, why should we settle with? Okay, you find the perfect candidate for everyone. Good luck with that. You know, you said, I want to remind everybody that listens to Rick. And Rick was right, is right. And I agreed with him. Why haven't we killed the filibuster? It will be killed, but it won't be by us. One of the first things that when Democrats and leftists and Democrat socialists get into powers, they are going to kill the filibuster. Then I suggested, you know what? Trump may get 2 more nominations to SCOTUS because Clarence Thomas, the chat is, yeah, he's thinking about it. And the chat is, well, Sam Alito is thinking about it. And that's driving all the leftists dribbly. Well, what about this? Why we still have power? You're going to have to do it soon, or else, it's a non-starter. Why don't you say, I kind of agree with the leftists. I'm thinking, okay, 4 more SCOTUS jurists. I'll nominate them and I'll get them in place. And that'll be lovely 13. But we don't think like these people, and these people continue winning as insane as they are. They're insane. They are sociopaths. They exhibit sociopathy. Clearly. But nobody's thinking out of the box. It's the same old GOP. What happens is at the end of the day, we go to the local DC bar, we sit down with the Democrats, and there's backslapping all around, Hey, we really fucked the American people today. Isn't that fun? We still have our phony baloney jobs. Give the governor a harumph. And here we are. There isn't frequently a dime's worth of difference between the two, as we're seeing now.
Sadly, but yeah.
But I'm sensing disagreement, and you have hope. Tell me why you have hope.
I have a little bit of hope because, first of all,
I need hope. I need that.
Well, first of all, like I said, if you look at the generic polling, not candidate specific polling, the Democrats are inside the margin of error for them to typically swing even just the House or even just the Senate in a midterm, they normally need +6, +9, and they don't have it. The left is trying to spin this most recent, I think it was a Polymarket thing that came out that predicted like a 46% chance that they were going to retake the House. A couple of weeks ago, that number was a lot higher. And they're still trying to spin it as a positive. And I'm like doing the math. I'm like, wait, so if 47% think that they're going to retake it, that means 57% don't. So where's that's not the majority. And again, it's just me looking at the numbers because, and also getting into the polling, because even to get them to the point where they're within the margin of error, they've had to oversample D 2-1 to get them within the margin of error.
Yeah, I need this. I need to hear this. I need some hope. I need something positive.
I mean, again,
don't stop. Keep going.
Well, I would be more positive if I knew the SAVE Act was going to be passed and be in effect before November. But again, the only other, so in between the polling and the fact that I know that in a lot of places where they pulled shenanigans in the 2020 election cycle, where they were able to do it not only at the national level, but in a lot of the places where they were able to put fingers on scales, a lot of that has been fixed. Because if you notice, they tried again this last time and it didn't work. Because you could see where they started trying to do it, and there were all these injunctions filed and all these other things that happened. They're like, no, and that all started beforehand. So that's why I think things came out the way that they did before. Now, with the socialism mask slipping off, you've got even more Democrats who up until 5 minutes ago were fine being in bed with the socialists. Who are like, oh, no, we can't do this anymore. I don't know if you were listening earlier, but I played a clip of like 4 of them that were like, no, this is not, no, we don't want that. No. So, yeah, so in between that, and again, the fact that the socialism mask has come off, the fact that, within the next couple of months, a lot of the, I'm pretty sure that a lot of the bloom is going to come off the rose for Mondami, because right now he's been able to spin a lot of different crap. But people are starting to dig into it, like him claiming, well, I balanced the budget. You didn't balance shit. You went to Mommy Kathy and said, can I have money, please, so I can say I balanced the budget? That's not the same thing. And at some point, people are going to notice. And when these same people, because let's face it, what just happened in Gotham, I know it's New York City, but that's everybody says Gotham was patterned after New York City, and the name kind of stuck. So everybody says that was basically their election. That's it. Those people are going to go to Congress. That means if the Republicans don't find some sort of shenanigans way to keep them from being sworn in for the next several months, everybody's going to get to hear exactly how insane these people are. So a lot of the places that still are purple are probably going to freak out even more, is my hope.
That's good to hear. I like that. You're kind of identifying, I guess, for lack of a better word, trends. You're going by the numbers, and the Democrats have made a huge mistake. Hakeem Jeffries is toast. He's a moron. His half-life is, I don't know, a month, 2 months, something like that. But even him, after hauling all the water possible for the Democrats, they're, like Carville said, there's a schism, a massive schism.
Well,
that cannot be reconciled.
Here's the other problem with that, though, because yes, they're united with Jeffries, or they were, in front of cameras, but you have to remember, the Democratic Party is the Democratic Party is the Democratic Party is the Democratic Party. So you remember when Obama came on the scene and Clinton quipped that a few years ago this boy would have been fetching our coffee? Yeah, so what's been happening with Jeffries behind the scenes, and I would almost be willing to guarantee it, and now that there's becoming a fracture with the Democratic Party, we'll probably actually start hearing about it, is behind closed doors, they're whipping him, screaming, your name is Toby. So they don't like him. Nobody in the Democratic Party likes him. You know how I know? Because they don't support him. If he was half the politician Nancy Pelosi was, none of this would be happening. And the scariest thing about Nancy Pelosi is, yes, she may be a geriatric Alzheimer's patient now, But everybody forgets when she came to power, you had to be ruthless as a woman when she got into DC to get anything done, much less accomplish the power base that she was able to grow. And nobody takes that into account. She came into Washington when women were still the ones fetching everybody's coffee and taking their notes and not being allowed in certain rooms. And she kicked down a lot of those doors. Say what you want about Nancy Pelosi. Yes, she is a shrew, but she's a shrewd shrew. And she managed to build an empire. And for anybody who thought Hakeem Jeffries was going to come in behind her and be the next Nancy Pelosi, you've just proven exactly how fucking retarded you were. Because this guy, and I've said this before, he doesn't even know what he's going to say from one point to the next. And you can hear it when his mental track skips because he starts doing Shatner pauses.
It does. Hey, dude, GMTA, because I was this far. Look how close my fingers are right now. Can you see it? Disembodied head. This far from saying the exact same thing about Nancy Pelosi. What if she were still around, as addled as she is? She would KATN, kick ass, and be continuing to take names. She could rally like few others. She could circle wagons like few others. But she's gone. They're not going to. She's everybody. Well, lots of Democrats are saying the same thing, except for Bernie, that they're all old. They're too addled. They're just, no, they're not the current thing. You know, the thing, the current thing. But yeah, I don't doubt you for one moment. Nancy Pelosi, oh yeah, she could.
Hey, Joe, do they pay you to be this stupid or do you do it for free? Because that 9 out of the top 10 poorest states line you just dropped, you're forgetting that it doesn't cost as much to live here. So it doesn't take as much money for us to live in the red states. Also, your whole they're the poorest states is bullshit. Because let's talk about the salt taxes, brother man. Yeah, you guys are stealing from us. Red states subsidize blue cities all day, every fucking day. We tried to end it. Your side threw a fit and got it back. So, yeah, either pay attention or get out of my chat.
Hey, Joe, by the way, you're clearly a government school product. Learn to spell.
Yeah, for what reason in education? The amount of money spent per student, which is the only thing they care about. The size of the administration and the amount of money spent per student are the two top points in every poll regarding education, which is where most of the damn money goes anyway. And you shouldn't really be talking about people's education when you can't spell one. It's not the correct one, sir. Get out of my chat.
Yeah. But thank God leftists reveal themselves.
Right?
Hey, Joe, if California has the 4th highest GDP in the world, why are people fleeing Califailure? I did. I got tired of using my hard-earned taxpayer dollars against me in Califailure, so I went to an actual free state. Hey, so are a lot of corporations too, you fucking moron. You are worth derision. You're worth laughing at because you're not serious. You're a Democrat loser.
Hey,
you
dude,
live in your mommy's basement.
You're still in my chat. So what, are you like spanking off to us MAGA losers in mommy's basement?
Probably.
Are your fingers covered in Cheeto dust? Because that'll mean mommy will notice later when she sponge bathes you, sir.
As well, that's coming tonight. That he gets that every night. Anyway.
They have changed all this stuff in here. Apparently I can actually like highlight and pin post now. I knew I could highlight before.
Cool.
But I've never been able to pin post before. That's interesting. Okay, into the sin bin with you, Joe. Bye.
Sin bin. That was Sin Bin, a new story, a new song by me in F sharp.
Nice. All right. So anyway, okay. So I did want to talk about this as well. Again, not really my, yeah, right. See, yeah, I'm wearing my colors because we actually won the College World Series this past week. So yeah, definitely sporting colors today. And I say we because I used to work there. So I can say that. But yeah, boomer sooner, Ricky. I appreciate the comment, sir. That's awesome. Because yeah, I have to admit I'm more into football, but their baseball program's been winning me over lately. It's kind of cool. But anyway, I'm sorry. I'll quit getting distracted by the chat at some point today. Maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, so there is a story that should surprise nobody, but kind of even made me scratch my head a little bit. So you remember that whole arson trial? And speaking of commie failure, a mistrial has been declared today in the case against Jonathan Ritternecht. So
refresh my memory. That name doesn't come immediately to mind.
So the guy who basically is responsible for starting the giant ass fire that everybody in the world was talking about while the mayor was overseas and Hollywood burned and rich people's houses burned. Yeah. Mistrial was declared today because the jury could not reach a unanimous verdict. So this gets even stranger. Jurors initially said Thursday they had reached a verdict, but about 30 minutes later, they told the court they actually had not. The final split was reportedly 10 jurors found not guilty and 2 for guilty. Federal prosecutors say they are not dropping the case, according to Bill Asaley, first assistant U.S. attorney from the Central District of California, said the government intends to retry Ritternecht and seek guilty verdicts on all charges. The fire itself was catastrophic, according to the article that I pulled this from. And again, as a reminder, it burned more than 23,000 acres, damaged or destroyed more than 6,800 structures, killed at least 12 people that we know of, and caused economic losses in the tens of billions. And again, that's billions with a B. So one notable part of the trial involved testimony suggesting prosecutors may have framed Ritternecht's alleged motive as a societal revenge ploy. A behavioral analysis testified that Ritternecht had used ChatGPT to create a dystopian-style image about a divide between wealthy people and everyone else. Prosecutors also claimed he was partly inspired by Luigi Mangione, the man accused of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Bottom line, the case may not be over yet, but again, out of 12 jurors, 10 wanted to find him not guilty. So that means if they had a verdict originally, that means they were going to go with not guilty, and for some reason, 2 people changed their mind. So you're telling me that with everything that we know and everything that they were able to say, they were going to try to let this guy off the hook for burning 23,000 acres and causing billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of damage.
Because I worked in this for so long, the first thing that I was thinking is, well, okay, like cops, where do you get your what's your source for cops in Califailure? Oh, the surrounding gene pool, which has been polluted for years. Well, where'd you get your jury? Though, of course, you have accusations on both sides. And the other thing that immediately came to mind is, what kind of case in chief did you display? It goes back to Simpson, to O.J. Simpson, and the judge and the 2 prosecutors, Darden and Marcia, whatever the hell her name was, and Judge Ito. Good God, I actually remember those names. What's wrong with me? And then, of course, jury nullification, because now these days I have to wonder how much in blue states that becomes an issue that you can or won't or refuse to see facts presented to you, because the jury is the trier of fact, and though through presentation they will eventually make that determination, and the judge is the determinant of the applicable law. That's all allegedly the judge is supposed to do. But now all those elements have entered into the mix these days. But it's sad that you can't unify around this guy. Something spooged into the punch bowl. on one side or both, because two things I've found out can be true simultaneously. But it makes me, I don't know. It's failure. I have to shrug my shoulders to a certain degree.
Yeah, I mean, me too. But still, I was like, I figured this one would be a slam dunk for anybody. I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
It falls into the BZ Yabbit, 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 ...
You just reminded me of my brother. His nickname for the longest time was Yabbit Kid, because we were 8 years apart. So at one point, I started getting to do things that he always wanted to do. Like sometimes the adults would call me in, if they needed like another person to play cards or whatever. And so he was always being told, go play with your stepbrother. So one time he got stuck, right? And so he's coming in. We're all sitting around the table playing Uno. He's like, I want to play. And my mom said, no. The bigger people are playing right now. Go play with your stepbrother. And so he said he said, yeah, but, and then he would leave. And then he came back and he tried again. And then he said, yeah, but, and then just left. And then like the fourth or fifth time, he gets so frustrated that he's just standing there for like 30 seconds. Yeah, but. And he just turns around and walks off. And like for 5 years after that, his nickname in the house was the Yabbit Kid. So,
a case of the untrenchable, unquenchable Yabbits. Except I may be spelling it incorrectly. I spell it YABBIT. Yabbit.
That's how I always spelled it, because I always, when you say it sounds like you're saying, yeah, I know it's supposed to be short for yeah, bud, but it sounds like.
I know. I've always been weird and fat. Well, no,
I resemble that remark. Yeah, I didn't used to be as fat when I used to chase people for a living, and then I got a job sitting down, and then I got fat.
So I can tell you exactly what happened to me. I was in patrol, fit as a fiddle, could bench 300 pounds, street monster, blah, blah, blah. Went to detectives, and in detectives, except in homicide, when you're in pairs, your entire day revolved around being by yourself, going here, going there, blah, 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 submitting warrants, DA, court. And the one thing that you had to look forward to, at least where I was working, was lunch, where you would get together with people and find out what all the other detectives are doing. And then I was no longer mobile. I just lost a lot of weight in 2004 and gained it mostly all back. Heavy sigh.
I get it. Because, like I said, when I was active and in the field, even after my injury, I got back to the point where I could be active again. And I was always working posting stuff when I owned my company, because that way I was out moving. And, and then when my company folded, I got a job sitting down. And the next thing I knew, I was like, it was already bad enough, because like all the way through high school, I had a 28-inch waist. In college, I had a 30-inch waist. And then I started having kids, and my waist said, I quit. Yeah. And I'm short and stubby anyway. So it was like 28, 30, and then 30, 30. And then I was like, damn it, I'm square. Like, I can't get any bigger than this. I've turned into a square, or a rectangle, I guess. And now I'm lucky if I can squeeze into 44s.
The thing that I use to attempt to justify my current position is I can remember a long time ago in my teens, one doctor, boy, this brings back a memory. The doctor's name was he was in downtown Sacramento, and he was Dr. Moss. And I shat thee not. He had a nurse who was named Miss. Her last name is Hap. Truly, Miss Hap. And the doctor told me, from the waist up, you're probably going to end up being about, 6'1", but you have very short legs. To the point where I said, anytime that I went to San Francisco or Pier 39, cod trawlers wanted to tie up to me. My legs were like pier pilings. All right, move on. That's not political. That's why we're here. Son of a gun. Rick, get me in line.
No, I did it. I'm the one who brought it up. I'm still thinking about Nurse Mishap, because that sounds like a great porn name.
Mishap. Oh, come in here. Oh, and I can also remember when I was a kid, which is why I will never, ever be an intravenous drug abuser. I hate needles. I once wrote in elementary school a note. We were supposed to get shot with whatever, and I wrote a note badly, handed it over, said, please excuse my son BZ from this shot, signed Mrs. BZ. And of course that went home and they called, and then I did get shot numerous times. One time when I got an injection, I started crying and I looked at my mom, and I was just a little feezer, and I turned around and I said, she shot me. Well, yeah, she did. God, what am I doing? Keep me on track, Rick. Please keep me on track.
I'm going to have to, because you got me thinking about my most embarrassing 2 moments at the doctor. And I don't want to talk about those. So
there's more.
So here's another piece that I thought was interesting. So apparently Hakeem Jeffries is still trying to charge or take large doses of copium. So an article I found from Red State says that House Majority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is struggling to respond to the Democratic Party's left flank, especially after socialist-backed candidates won in New York. And some activists reportedly chanted that Jeffries is next. I love how they keep saying reportedly when there's video proof. I don't understand the need of that, but whatever. According to the article, Jeffries did a CNBC interview with Joe Kernan, who pressed him on whether Democrats should reject far-left positions, like abolishing police, abolishing prisons, and opposing all deportations. According to the piece, Jeffries avoided directly confronting that issue and instead shifted back to attacking none other than, you guessed it, Orange Man Bad, guy with the big orange cat on his head, Donald Trump. The second major point in the article is that Jeffries was challenged over a claim about gas prices. He reportedly said the national average was $4.20. I think he only said that because he was high, $4.20. Get it? But CNBC corrected him on air, saying it was actually, as of right now, $3.93. So Jeffries, basically, to try to make things sound really, really bad, was like, gas prices are still higher than they are. Look, gas prices are still higher than where they should be. And BZ and I don't always agree on everything, but I do agree with where we ended up with the Iran thing. We probably should have just left it alone. Because according to Donald Trump, the stuff that we went back in to bomb even more was already buried anyway. And now that we've decided they get to keep ballistic missiles, and now that we've decided and given them the idea, well, the Strait of Hormuz is probably never going to go back to how it was before the war, because now we've figured out if we press hard enough, we can make another $40 billion a year. So, again, Jeffries talking about gas prices being higher than they are is a bad look when people can do their own math. But Donald Trump putting us into a position where a supposedly weakened nation with a destroyed navy can still blockade the Straits of Hormuz indicates to me that their navy wasn't as broken as we were told it was, especially since they just took a pot shot at another ship yesterday because they used the wrong lanes. That doesn't sound very ceasefire-y to me. Just saying. Doesn't sound very ceasefire-y.
No. And the other thing apparently we're discovering is the U.S. Navy base in Bahrain was targeted a bunch of times between, like, I think February and June, sometime in June. And people are looking at satellite imagery and whatnot. And the Pentagon has said that some places that were hit hard were allegedly not hit quite so hard. And I'm finding it very difficult to not believe that someone has been whispering in President Trump's ear saying, this is how you will accomplish things better. Just temper yourself, be understanding. And look, I went with Gene last week, Berardelli from Behind Enemy Lines. Great dude. He and I kind of disagreed. And you go.
He and I disagree a lot. So.
And you go in, and we should have laid everything low. Like I said about Fallujah, that's essentially how Iran should have been handled. You level everything because now you're getting what you see here. And then I'm afraid, I don't know for a fact, that President Trump brought all these assets and material and war machines a great distance only to not use them in the way that they should have been used. As I've said for multiple decades, our military people are precious, absolutely precious. They are gold. And I support our military because, I came from a military family. We moved all over. And you don't apply our beloved military unless you plan to kill everyone and break as much shit as possible. And if you don't have that willingness to back you up, then just don't. Just don't. You've said for a long time. Black Death said, yeah, Trump is president because more people support him than oppose him. I completely agree. Completely agree with that. Just go back to 2016. But unless you're willing to commit, then...
Hey, Stuart, your mom swallows, bitch.
I didn't even see it. It's probably a tranny. Just be very careful and circumspect before you apply our people. But if you do, kill everyone, break everything. Especially with Islam.
Yeah. And this is why I get into the thing of, since I knew we weren't really going to be able to do that, I don't really know why we did what we did. And I still submit that I really think Donald Trump was going to be able to snuggy snatch Iran the same way he did in Venezuela. Because I think that's what he thought, because he was still riding the high from Venezuela. That one went off almost completely without a hitch. The new vice president was like, oh, please don't do that to me. I will work with you. Even though at one point he was talking about replacing her. And I think he thought he was going to get the same out of Iran. But the problem is, again, Venezuela, believe it or not, still in our part of the hemisphere. Them, not so much. They have a completely different way of life. They have a completely different outlook on life. So, yeah, we've bombed them down to the third string, and they are still, all Americans must die. The great Satan must die, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. So he started running into a brick wall ideologically because, again, the reason I knew we weren't going to be able to go in and lay everything low, because, yeah, we did that in a couple of instances to a point in smaller areas, but we couldn't lay them completely low because, again, after World War II, we rebuilt the system that the Germans and the Japanese tried to destroy. And we tied everything together on purpose to try to make sure that we wouldn't ever find ourselves in a World War III, especially after we realized that there was another World War 35 years after the one we thought was only going to be the only one, 35 years-ish. And so we tried to put safety measures in place and made us the king of the mountain, and, and Atlas and Sisyphus all rolled into one. And that's why we have fought to a stalemate, a draw, or a withdrawal ever since the end of World War II, because we're keeping one hand on the trigger and one hand on the scales that we put together. So I knew at some point we were going to have to pull back. What I didn't expect when it was time to pull back is that we weren't still going to, do things behind the scenes. Look, I don't trust our clandestine services any further than I could throw them anymore, because there's way too many anti-Trump folks and TDS folks that are entrenched. We figured that out the first time. We tried to clean a lot of them out. They burrowed even deeper. But there's no reason why we couldn't have said, hey, our group's not going to want boots on the ground, because we told them we weren't going to do any new wars, and they don't really seem to understand that this is, in fact, not a new war. So why weren't we helping Israel get boots on the ground, use their clandestine services to go in and start arming the Iranian people that have been screaming for freedom for 40 years? These are the things that we should have been doing while we were using what we could do to level as much as we could. We should have been working behind the scenes with our ally and saying, hey, we know it's going to take you guys a long ass time to get there on your own if you do it, but why don't you fly some of your special forces folks over to our carriers, and then we will help you get there. And you can start arming people and start an insurgency. Now, this may or may not already be going on, because if it's done right, we're not going to know until it pops off. But at the same time, I've seen no indication that that's happening. And believe it or not, because I have been doing this now for almost 20 years, I do have some inside sources that are like, yeah, we kind of wish that was happening, but it's not. So I don't know.
Well, Rick Robinson, props where props are due. You'd said back in 1979, this was an issue that could have been halted basically back then. And for 47, I forget, I don't know the numbers, 47, 48 years later, we're still here. Now, every other president has set Iran responsible for hundreds of thousands of deaths by proxy, indirectly, around the world. And yet no other president was in a mood to attempt to address this in a certain fashion. But yet it shows the extreme ignorance of the Western mind and civilization that you don't understand Islam. How is that possible? I'm a moron. Even I get I listen to what they say, and then I believe them after I watch what has happened. I'm an observer of history. I believe them. Why don't you guys?
Part of that's because of your training and my training, and you'll see a lot of folks that, maybe not even law enforcement, but military training that are the same way, because they start taking people at face value, because you start understanding, unlike Western society teaches, remember, we're always taught, oh, don't believe what they tell you when they're mad. Really? No, that's when you should be paying the most attention. Because that's when all the filters are gone. That's when they don't care anymore whether they hurt your feelings.
Well,
that's when they're showing you who they are. And that's what we keep running into, is we have this Western idea of, oh, we can't really hold things against people that they say when they're mad at us, and that's why we should never believe what they're saying. And that's what we keep running into. Well, they don't really mean it. They're just mad about something else. And if we can figure out what that is and fix it, then they'll love us. The problem with that logic is that's the same logic the Republicans have been using with the Democrats ever since the founding of the Republican Party. We don't understand why they're mad at us, but if we can figure out why, then Big Brother will love us again. It doesn't work. It's never going to work. It's never going to work with these people. And this is exactly what Donald Trump ran headlong into. In a Western civilization, and we saw it, you show them how powerful you are, and you leave people that can see how powerful you are, and they will work with you. We saw it in Venezuela. There, they don't care. If there's one person that believes the caliphate is the only way and that Western civilization has to die to get there, then they will do whatever they have to do to hide, lie, rebuild, and try again. And that's what we ran headlong into. And that's the problem. It's never going to be over as long as there's any of them left, because as long as they're alive, they win. They don't fight the same way we fight. They took the punch from the great Satan, and they're still there. And now they're the tail wagging the dog when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, because, you notice in the Memorandum of Understanding, it only says they can't charge tolls for 60 days. Why the fuck is that 60 days there at all? Doesn't need to be there. They can't charge tolls, period. Didn't need to be a window to say, well, we're going to come up with another agreement later, because all you did was tell them, well, now we've got wiggle room. And that's exactly what they're saying. Now they're saying you have to use our routes, not the one the U.S. have said. And if you don't, then we're going to shoot at you. And they did. And they've already said, we've done the math. We can make $40 billion a year off of access fees and this fee and that fee. And so this is never going to go back to the way that it was before, which again puts us back between a rock and a hard place, because this is normally where we would just be like, okay, fuck it, bomb them. But we can't, because we are still seriously risking a worldwide depression if we bomb them too hard, and it's our own fucking fault. We have done this to ourselves, because everything we ever do is short-sighted. Think about this from another perspective. The reason we're in this mess is because BP got pissed off in the 50s, or what eventually became BP got pissed off in the 50s when Iran elected a socialist prime minister. And they were like, oh no, they're not taking our oil away. They're not taking our oil mechanisms that we've built away from us. So they put pressure on us for us to help them. And then eventually we overthrew them and put in the Shah. And then that pissed off that other side. This is all because of our short-sighted bullshit. Think about Hong Kong. And if I remember when it used to be, now everything's made in Taiwan. Remember when always it was made in Hong Kong? And they signed this, what was it, 75, 80-year lease. And everyone's like, oh, this is awesome. We're going to build it up. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And then eventually it gets turned back over to China. And China's like, oh, all your bases belongs to us. Short-sighted bullshit.
Which is a reference I actually get. and few will. To which I respond, what's the frequency, Kenneth? But people don't understand. The Western mind is of a nature that it does not understand another element that doesn't think precisely like them. Bush was fundamentally flawed, thinking that, oh, well, the people in the sandbox, they think no, they don't. Well, they want no, they don't want freedom. Freedom is not an element of Islam. It's like the shoe bomber, the Beltway snipers, the Fort Hood shooter, the underwear bomber, the coal bombers, the Madrid train bombers, Bali nightclub bombers, London subway bombers, blah, 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 blah. Substitute the word Muslim, because they were all muzzies, with Catholic or Catholics, and then tell me if you think there'd be any Catholic churches standing today.
Oh, no.
And the answer is no. They'd all be smoldering husks.
Well, again, this is the problem of us not believing who they are when they show us, because, again, we come across this problem. What is the actual English translation for the word Islam?
Submit.
What is it that we keep saying, because everybody keeps saying, well, there's only like 1.5 million, Islamists that are the terrorists and the rest of them are peaceful. Really? Then why aren't they cleaning up their own fucking house?
Yeah.
Because you know what?
About that.
You know what happens when Christians find out that some folks that are using the name of Christ have gone too far? Anybody remember Westboro Baptist Church and how they were getting big in the news cycle for a while? Guess what? You don't hear shit from them anymore because a bunch of bikers for Christ went and stopped a mud hole in their ass and told them to shut the fuck up. If there are so many more peaceful Muslims than there are militant Muslims, why are they not cleaning up their own house? Because the peaceful ones are fucking lying to you. That's why.
Well, there is no such thing as a moderate Muslim. That doesn't exist. A, they're doing it wrong. Or B, they're just cowards. Maybe behind the scenes, they're doing it right, genuflecting toward Mecca 5 times a day, blah, blah, blah. But they're not practicing Islam as written, or they're just cowards.
Well, no, so here's an interesting parallel that just occurred to me. So if there were such a thing as peaceful Muslims, and they were just doing what they had to do to survive, there would have come a point, much like we're starting to see with the Democratic Party, where you have people that have been entrenched there for a long time going on camera and saying, hey, this ain't my party anymore. I don't stand for this. I don't know what they're doing. They need to start their own party, which is funny because technically they already did. The DSA is its own political organization.
Yes.
I don't know why they're just not saying, hey, go run under that banner and leave us the fuck alone. But that's neither here nor there, because at some point, especially, you would think after 9/11 and us starting to, start this supposed war on terror, which is funny because nobody ever told me that was over, but we're now letting Iran make millions and millions and millions of dollars. Last I checked, I thought we were freezing funds for terrorists. But that's another story for another time. But there would have been a point, you would think, that all of these supposed peaceful Muslims would be coming out going, yeah, we don't stand for this. You know what they were doing? They were dancing in the fucking streets. And I don't want to hear about it because it was, well, that was in Iran and that was in places where they had to. No, they were fucking doing it here. Here. So don't tell me about the peaceful Muslims, because that's all I've heard from places like Dearbornistan for the last 20 years is, well, we let in all the peaceful Muslims. Really? Then why are they out? Why are they telling everybody that they're not here to assimilate? They are here to colonize. Why have they started doing the Muslim call to prayer 5 fucking times a day, starting at the butt ass crack of dawn, 4 other times? But let's start it before the sun even comes up and start, again, following along with some of the stuff you talked about last night. That loud ass fucking prayer call, which guess what? In their own countries is fucking illegal. They can't even do that there because And the funny thing about that is, with as oppressive as that regime is, they even have laws against praying in public. Now, they can beat the fuck out of their women. There was a story about an Iranian pop star who dared to do a show without a hijab on, who apparently was going to get like 78 lashes and be barred from leaving the country of Iran for like a year. I haven't heard whether anybody on our side said, hey, no, the fuck you're not. But then again, we keep saying we're the ones with all the cards, but they seem to be the ones calling all the shots. So somebody explain that part to me. But again, where are all the supposed peaceful Muslims, and why aren't they? I mean, look, I get it. Some of them are lip service. A lot of the Democrats that are coming out now and saying, no. They were fine with the socialists until 5 minutes ago. But even there, some of them, I think, are genuinely going, oh, shit, this stuff's gone too far. We were fine as long as you were our militant arm causing trouble and we could disavow ourselves from you. But now that you're winning and you're telling everybody on your website that you want to fund, you remember when Barack Obama said, I want to fundamentally transform America? The DSA does, and not in a good way. If you don't believe me, just go look at their website. It's fucking insane, the things that they want to do. But the Democrats are coming to terms with the fact that, oh, no, these people are nuts. I don't want anything to do with them. Why didn't that happen with Islam?
Well, to make probably one of the final points for your show, let's go back to this. Let's go back to the Republicans. Let's go back to John Thune. There are things that we could be doing that are not. Tim Burchett, Republican Representative Tim Burchett, one of the best guys. Dude came out of nowhere to follow me, which is really weird. Has been saying for a long time, okay, guess what? Let's talk about Al-Qaeda. Let's talk about the Taliban. They took over the Taliban in 2021. And yet we, the United States, by way of USAID, we're still sending $40 million per week of our hard-earned taxpayer money to the Taliban. This has been in front of John Thune for over a year, and there is no action on it. Make that make sense, kids.
I can't.
That's just one aspect of the trillion. I am convinced it's trillions of dollars that we pissed away, and a good portion of what we owe our debt is from USAID and all these other non-consequential, no consequences, no responsibility money that we keep throwing at people, but we won't stop the knife from slitting our national debt throat. Make it make sense.
I can't. And I said this last night on Jen and Rick. I think I know who the new head of Doge needs to be. Second Lady Usha Vance. She got like a $50 dress for $9. We need to put her in charge of government efficiency, because holy crap, especially if you can get a maternity dress for $9, you are doing some stuff right. But I mean, final thought from me, because there's still way too much to get into. Here's the thing. And again, so good news point that I just saw come across. I guess the committee for the South Dakota House has voted to censure John Thune. It has to go before the full South Dakota House to get anywhere before it goes anywhere else. But they have officially voted to censure him over some of the stuff that happened with Pressler recently. And then the bad news, Mike DeWine, governor of Ohio, is pissing and moaning because the Supreme Court is going to destroy their economy because of the removal of Haitian temporary protection statuses.
Hey, kids, what party is Mike DeWine?
I didn't look, but I'm pretty sure he's a Republican.
He sure is.
So, yeah, I mean, again, we can give all the lip service we want, but I've been saying this for years. There is only about a hair's breadth between both parties. The only thing that's really different for the most part is the speed with which they want to get you to the final destination, which in point of fact happens to be the same. For the left, they want to get you there on a Chinese bullet train, hoping you get there so fast you don't notice. The right wants to get you there on a handcar, hoping that they'll get you there so slowly that you don't realize you're there until it's too late and you're already there. And we're running into that with John Thune and with a bunch of other folks that have been entrenched and have been in DC for too long. And I really don't know how to fix it because everybody keeps telling me, well, term limits, term limits, term limits. We have those in Oklahoma, and it didn't do what we hoped it was going to do. All it does is put a clock on people before they realize, oh, I've only got about a year left. I better start figuring out what my golden parachute's going to be when I can't do this anymore. And if that's happening at the state level, I can only imagine how bad that would get at the federal level. There would have to be all kinds of stuff buried in that bill of you can't do this for so long after, you can't do this for so long after. And it would wind up probably being longer than Obamacare to try to cover for all the shady shit these people do. So I don't know if a fix. And one of the things that Gene and I argued about the other night when I was losing my shit over the memorandum of understanding, he kept saying, so what's your alternative? And I didn't say it because I knew it would lead to even more of an argument, but I wanted to say, I'm not the fucking president. I didn't run for president. I don't have to have a plan. That's his fucking job, not mine. And he didn't have a plan. If he had a plan, he misread the room, which is hard to say because Trump usually does a pretty good job of reading a room. But he was so focused on just thinking he was going to be able to go in, knock their dick in the dirt, and have somebody that was willing to work with him, just like he just did in Venezuela, that he misread the room. And I don't know how we get out of it now. I don't disagree with us going in if he had found a way to finish the job without tipping the apple cart. The problem is it was going on for so long that he didn't have a clean way to not tip the apple cart anymore. And the other problem with that is when the side that you're fighting against needs the world to collapse to bring about their caliphate or their version of the return of Jesus, basically, then you're playing into their hand the closer and closer you get it. So that's why they're still just sitting back going, no, none of this is going back to the way that it was before. We're going to find ways to make more money. We are telling you that there aren't going to be any nuclear inspections. We are telling you this isn't going to happen. And then we have the folks, even like Rubio, who keep saying, well, they're telling us different things behind closed doors than they're saying, and we think they're just trying to placate their people. No, they're being honest with their people. They're lying to you. You really need to figure out the difference before it's too late, and sadly, I think it may already be. But on that note, we have run long, and my voice is actually starting to fade again. So where can folks find you, BZ?
Well, thanks for asking me here. I appreciate it. I am BZ of BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, and I can be heard on Tuesday and Thursday nights, 8 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Central, and 11 p.m. Eastern on the SHR Media Network. And also, thankfully, courtesy of Rick Robinson, right here on KLRN. I am your conservative Sherpa. And what I do is I guide you through the terrible Democrat, leftist, and globalist lies and chaos and bedlam and deceit and betrayal, because he's my job, man.
He's his job, and he does it well, man.
He's my job, man.
All right. So as far as me, you can find me at Radivik73 on X. You can follow along with everything we do here at KLRN Radio. That is on Facebook, YouTube, and X. On Rumble, it's a little different. We had to use the tagline over there because for some reason they wouldn't let me put it as KLRN Radio. So our tagline has always been America's Podcast Network. So that's what we're found under there as. Now, as far as for me, I'll be back later tonight for He Said, She Said with the lovely Aggie Rican. I'll be back tomorrow night, finally, with the deep dive on all of the recent UFO drops that have happened on Juxtaposition, and Sunday night back with Kingdom and Country. And then Monday, everything starts over. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, Rick Robinson show at 1 p.m. Eastern time. For everything else, just check the schedule. You can also find me as an occasional contributor at misfitspolitics.com, loftusparty.com, twitchy.com, and I also produce the Loftus Party podcast, which drops on Tuesday. And for those of you that might be interested in starting a podcast, even if you don't want to be affiliated with us, I do run my own production company, so feel free to hit me up, Rick at KLR Radio. And on that note,
I'll be on Sunday night, by the way.
Oh, that's right. I forgot you did
another KLRN devotee. I want to chew through all the KLRN podcast stars. And this Sunday night on BZ's Sunday Night Saloon, I will be having the inimitable Alan Ray. And he already has a show on Sunday night, but he has deigned to lower himself to appear in the saloon.
Oh yeah, dude. Al is amazing. He's another one. Like the first time I heard you and you're like, oh, I'm not that great. And I'm listening to you. I'm like, dude, this sounds like somebody that's been doing this shit like professionally. Same thing with him. First time he sent me over the first time he ever did anything. He did this little 5-minute recording called the Hardcore Patriot. It was like this 5-minute thing. And it was so good that I started asking him just to do one a week so I could do it as part of my show. And then eventually he started doing his own shows as pre-recording. And then he was like, I like doing it, but I don't know. And I was like, you're missing the energy. You got to start doing it live. And once he started doing it live, he was hooked.
Well, I don't know. Maybe you can confirm or deny this. I heard possible allegations that he's thinking about backing off on shows and podcasts. So I thought, whoa. I don't even know who this guy is. I know almost nothing about him. Dude, you got to get him on the show. So thankfully he is acquiesced Sunday night.
Yeah, he says that. But then when I said, the place wouldn't be the same without him, he's like, I got a few more reigns left in me. So yeah, at some point he may leave. I mean, we've had folks leave before. Polita Bunny used to do a show with us every week. Now she's just part of the K-Larn Players crew. We've had other folks that have stood down their shows. So, I mean, it happens. I mean, some folks just, after a time, they feel like they've done everything they can do and they move on to something else. As for me, I'm stubborn.
Me too. And I got to get him before he goes, if he goes.
So, yeah, I mean, I figure as long as I have breath in my lungs and power and internet, I'll probably be doing this till the day they put me in a box and throw me in an oven. Because I'm getting roasted. I mean, after this last funeral, watching everybody and I'm not trying to be a dick about it or anything, but watching everybody scream and blubber and cry over my aunt, I looked at one of my cousins. I said, this is exactly why I'm getting oven roasted, because I don't want anybody standing over my body blubbering. That's not what it's about.
Yeah, I wouldn't need the hydration.
Dude, it was heart-wrenching. I'm like, this is exactly what I don't want at my funeral. That's why the only thing you're going to see of me is a picture, and I'll be in an urn, because I don't want anybody just collapsing when they go up to say goodbye. At least I hope that doesn't happen.
I want a lot of self-programmed songs to be played. I have about 40 or 50 of them that I've pre-selected, and I want a lot of heavy drinking.
So you want to have an Irish wake, is what you're saying?
Yeah, baby.
Speaking of Ireland, I got kind of Scottish, not Ireland, but yeah, the Scottish have been big in the news. I got to say, I found a couple of so I have an aversion to redheads since my ex-wife left because she was a redhead. There are a couple of Scottish women that I have found on YouTube that have changed my mind about that. All I'm going to say.
Nice.
Holy smackerels. Anyway, we got to go. I'm just going to play us out with a regular outro because we didn't change tax today anyway, really. So I'm just going to put this one out as an extended version.
Thanks, Rick.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. Even you chat haters. Thanks for making my numbers bigger.
From red dirt roads to the Capitol steps, Rick's calling truth, no regrets. Fire in his voice, facts in his hand, talking sense to the heart of this land. It's the Rick Robinson Show, where the truth rides high, no spin, no script, just an eagle.
Say goodnight, Gracie.